This meeting is being recorded.
Hello.
Hello, Commissioner Jackson.
Good afternoon, evening, Commissioner Jackson.
Hello, everyone. Are we ready to begin, Shannon? Sorry, I'm a minute or two late here.
No worries, Chair Jackson. We have restarted the recording and we have a quorum.
Very good, very good. Well, welcome to everyone on this final day of February as we gather for the Commission on Equity for our meeting for the month. And with a quorum, I'm now calling the meeting to order. And the first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda, the previous meeting minutes, and the consent items. Is there a motion?
Oh, you're muted.
I'm muted?
No, Cliff was.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Commissioner Brown, yes, I move that we accept the agenda and the consent items.
Is there a second?
A second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Brown and seconded by Annie that we approve the agenda, the previous minutes, and the consent items. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda and item 1 is approved. Do we have anyone joining us in the public today by Zoom that we might see your hands if you care to address us with any public comment?
Chair Jackson, I do not see anybody raising their hand.
Okay. Do we have anyone joining our meeting by Zoom today? Other than participants in the meeting?
That is correct, Chair Jackson.
Okay, very good. Is there anyone joining us by phone that you see any evidence of? Okay, hearing none, then public comment session is closed. And our inspirational item for the day is being provided by Vice Chair Brown.
Thank you. With this being Black History Month, I found some quotes from some people who are well known throughout the U.S. and many across the world that I thought would be inspirational. So I'm just going to read them to you. They're very brief. The first one is, success is to be measured not so much by the position that one reached in life as by the obstacles which he has overcome while trying to succeed. That is from Booker T. Washington. The second one is, you can only become accomplished at something you love. Don't make money your goal. Instead, pursue the things you love doing and then do them so well that people can't take their eyes off of you. That is from Maya Angelou. The next one is, in the end, it's not about finding policies that work. It's about forging consensus and fighting cynicism and finding the will to make change. That is from former President Barack Obama. And the final one is, won't it be wonderful when Black history and Native American history and Jewish history and all of the U.S. history is taught from one book, just U.S. history. And that is from Maya Angelou. Those are inspirational thoughts for the month. Thank you.
Thank you, Cliff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any comments from Cliff on his inspirational item this evening?
That's really good.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. That takes us to our business items on the agenda then, but the first being that of the Bi-Pac Business Training Program.
Good evening, commissioners. It's a pleasure to be here tonight, and thank you for taking some time on your agenda for us to present you a new program that's just launched earlier this month with the partnership with the Thurston EDC, which is the Bi-Pac Business Support Training Program. First, I'll do quick introductions, and I'll turn it over to Wesley for an overview of the program. My name is Rick Walk. I am the Director of Community and Economic Development for the City of Lacey. And with us tonight is Wesley Wynn, the Economic Development Coordinator for the City of Lacey, and Sean Moore, Executive Director of the Center for Business and Innovation. And so tonight, Wesley's going to give a quick overview of the new training program that was launched earlier this month. And Sean is here to answer questions and be part of the presentation as well, as he helped design the curriculum and is administering it through his efforts at the Center for Business Innovation. So with that, I'll turn it over to Wesley for the rest of the presentation.
Cool. Thank you, Rick. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Wesley Gwynn. When we do business support and economic development, we work through our multiple partners here at Thurston County. And one of our partners that we often work with is the Thurston EDC, Economic Development Council. And Sean is one of the staff of that organization. So in 2017, City Council approved funding of about $30,000 to support the scale up training. So for the since 2017, we've been supporting that training, and the training is provided by EDC. And then early in 2021, that training was very popular, the scale up training, and the Department of Commerce, our State Department of Commerce, really liked the impact of that program. And so they provided funding for the EDC to make it statewide. And in that regard, our contribution, middle of the year, we had to shift and reallocate to figure out how we can use that money, because currently that scale up program was going to be funded by the Department of Commerce, so we didn't need that extra EDC didn't need that extra 30,000. So in that regard, we developed what we call scale up 200 level, which is a higher level of scale up folks that have gone through scale up and wanted that extra training to improve and to grow their business. And so that program was put in place in middle of the year in 2021. Unfortunately, we don't know why, but the demand for that program was not very high. And so given that situation, and then given what's going on with COVID, we wanted to relook at the funding support. So Sean and I were talking about how we could support our community better, and talking to folks in the Bi-Pac communities and trying to figure out how we can support them better. And so we started to brainstorm this training program called the Business Startup Training. So the focus of the training is trying to support underserved communities. So Bi-Pac folks, women, veterans that are either want to start a business in Lacey or live in Lacey, or already have a business in Lacey. And so that's our target population. We started the first cohort earlier this month, like around February 15. We had about 19 accepted applicants for the program. And then Sean can share some of the detail of the training. But basically, we wanted a training that not only teach them about, the legality of how to set up a business or writing a business plan, but also the key here is how they can access resource. So whether it be accessing city information about how to do a pre-sub, or what are the zoning regulations. So we had last week, we had one of our senior planner did a presentation where she shared some of the zoning regulation of what can you do and cannot do if you go into a rental of this spot. So that sort of thing helped them to really share some information that they could use to make the right decision. So with that, I'd like to invite Sean to share some of his thought on the cohort and answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thanks, Wesley, and good evening, everyone. Nice to see everyone's smiling faces this late in the day. So this is work that we here at the Center for Business and Innovation, this is work we do on an everyday business through our women's Business Center and through our other, 14 plus programs, we work with a lot of underserved communities. And so one of the barriers to success is having those underserved communities actually understand that we exist and we're here to help. And then obviously there's always a trust barrier to get over on top of that too. And so this training was, a bridge to help start that conversation and help to get more folks in our door that, we're targeting with our services, which most of them are no cost. And so this training is really focused, like most of our startup trainings, on just the nuts and bolts of starting a business, the stuff that, you go into, entrepreneurship, not really knowing, including, structures and licensing and insurance and all that kind of fun stuff. So we cover all of those bases. The other thing that we really try to emphasize with most of our trainings, and especially in this one, is the lean business startup model. One of the major barriers to any kind of success, and it's something that, startups see across the board, but especially in underserved communities, is that it's a very difficult task to access capital to start the business. And, there's a number of, barriers and situations that can cause, pain points for these folks. And so what we advocate for is a lean business startup, meaning that you go through these steps to start your business, get it up and running, and then take it stage by stage into a place where then you can access capital at points of growth. And so that's really the emphasis of this training, is really to make sure that everyone understands that it is possible to start a business, and you don't need to go into a bank and get a $40,000, $50,000 loan to start the business. You can start today. You can start doing work in this day and age. There's social media, there's, things you can use to build a brand without having to have a lot of, capital on hand. And so that's what we advocate for. And that's at the, the backbone of what this training is really about, is making sure that everyone knows that you can start a business, and people do it every day. It just takes a little, effort, and it takes a little understanding. And then we try to provide just the basic knowledge and the basic, stages and steps to make sure that people can understand where they're going and what they should do at each of these different stages in their business. And so that's what we're trying to do here. And we hope that this cohort is going to be a success, and we're going to have another cohort starting April 19th. And it looks right now like we have a nice diverse bunch in this group, and that's always positive to see, and something that, we hope to continue to work on. And see more of these businesses actually opening.
Thank you, Sean. And just kind of to wrap up, I just want to really emphasize, though, that we've had a long-standing and really good and strong collaborative partnership with the Thurston Economic Development Council, as well as the Center for Business and Innovation, in developing different programs. And the City of Lacey's always looked at ways to leverage resources to assist in providing support to our business community. And one of them has been through the Scale Up program. When the Small Business Administration several years ago stopped funding, the City Council did step in and say, we want to continue this program for our Lacey businesses. And what the nice thing about that decision several years ago did was it created the resource and opportunity to figure out how we can tailor the various curriculum models to meet specific goals and audiences. And so I think it's really evolved into a really nice partnership to be able to offer this type of training today. And as Sean mentioned, one of the biggest challenges is trying to make sure that people are aware of the resources that are available to them. And this is one other way to be able to do that. And it's not just at the training stage or the business growth, but even interacting with your local government. A lot of businesses have to interact with our permitting counter. So by trying to bring our planners into the training cohort to be able to be one of the instructors helps identify people they can relate to that are also there to help across the counter, to help them find the right location, get through the right permitting process. And so they are aware and the steps it take to be able to establish that first brick and mortar location. So with that, I know there's some questions, so I'll stop there and we can respond to the questions of the commission.
Thank you, Rick and Wesley and Sean. And let's open it up for commissioners to ask questions of either of these three.
I have a couple of questions. How often do you all meet, or your cohort?
So right now the cohort is 5 weeks, so it's Tuesdays from 10 to 11:30 a.m. With the model I've created, I realized that, you know, a lot of folks are going to have some trouble coming to, you know, the webinar series. And so everything is duplicated online. And so all of the coursework is available online through 4 different business enterprise startup training courses, including accounting for startups, including structuring and licensing for startups, branding and marketing. And so they have access to those courses, which normally are, you know, $3.99 for the bundle at no cost. Additionally, they get a 6-month access to a business plan writing software called Live Plan. And this is a tool that I've used for years and something that is extremely valuable to new business owners because it helps them to write a business plan and it helps take them through the steps of writing a business plan much easier. And so that's one of the things through COVID we understand is that, you know, you need to have an online component to everything because not everybody's going to be able to make it to the 10 o'clock class.
Right. Yeah. COVID definitely taught me all of that. I think without COVID, you know, it was one of the things, me being as a business owner, that was kind of hard for me before COVID because I don't have a brick and mortar, and it was really hard trying to get someplace during the summer, especially because that's high season for me. So being able to, you know, you may have somebody who still works full time, but is trying to start up a business. And so they may not be able to get away if they work full time during the day or at night. The only other question I had is, do you have a mentoring aspect to your plan or to your program?
So we actually have 3 different sort of one-on-one components. And so we have a study hall session that's open on Thursdays, so folks can drop in via Zoom and talk to me and ask questions directly about their business. Through our center, we also offer no-cost business coaching and business advising through the Washington Center for Women in Business or the Small Business Development Center. And then also Wesley has worked with the South Sound Lacey Chamber of Commerce to develop a relationship there. So if folks are looking for, you know, actual small business mentors, we can connect them with the Chamber of Commerce, and then they can connect there. And you know, it's case by case, and some people do want that mentorship, and other people just want the online stuff and to be left alone to do their thing. And so I think just having all of the different options is good because it kind of helps. It doesn't leave anybody out.
Okay, awesome.
Kim, I see your hand.
Yeah, I had a couple questions. One was similar to the mentorship, but the cohort, I wonder if that cohort is going to like sort of coalesce together as support beyond this class session. And the other question was, will you have a booth at the this month's cultural celebration? Might be a good place to have some information.
So we do not have a booth currently, and you're right, it might be something to look into, and I'll definitely check into that.
We're going to have a table, so if you want to, like, you know, put some information on our table, that'd be good too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we have a flyer with a link and a QR code we can definitely print out and get to you if that works. Mm-hmm. And in terms of the cohort model, ideally, what we're trying to build is referral sources and referral partnerships. And so the hope is that going through the cohorts together and connecting, then they would refer, you know what I mean, their future customers to the other business, and this business would refer their, and you know, and you build some nice, you know, energy and vibes around the idea of, you know, and we don't do much. We actually have started with our Scale Up program a social media platform just for the cohorts, but we haven't brought that into the startup programs yet. And so we're definitely moving towards that direction because it seems to be working for the Scale Up program. it is a little bit of a heavier lift in terms of the technology. And so it's something that, you know, we're definitely evolving into. But I think the networking aspect of it is absolutely, you know, it's definitely one of the best parts of running cohorts like this.
Mhm.
I see Cliff's hand and Kim's hand. Kim, you have a question?
Yeah, Cliff, you can go ahead and
No.
go if you like. I think I will go after you.
No, go ahead, because I had a three-part question and they're getting answered as you guys are asking questions. So go ahead. Go ahead, Kim.
Okay. So for some reason my internet connection wasn't very good, so I didn't hear you very good here, but hope you can hear me good. First of all, hi, Sean.
Hi.
I'm froze. Can you guys hear me okay?
Oh, not yet. Now you're good.
We hear you.
Oh, okay, great. So I wanted to, well, thank you very much for the information. What a timely info, because I wanted to share at work, I am changing after 23 years of working at LCB. Now I'm going to Department of Enterprise as a Business Diversity Program Manager. And this topic, thank you. This topic agenda is so timely because I would like to reach out to Sean, Wesley, and Rick because I like to collaborate and offer how we can work together. Because of course, my goal is to reach out and bring more of business from minority, diversity, small business. You know what you guys are already doing. I like to add to it, and of course, share more resources and you know, opportunities to work together. So currently I've been at LCB, been a small business liaison for many, many years. So I could also offer some other resources. I would think that you already know, but I mean, who knows? I'm also a business mentor at SCORE. So anyone who need that second language assistance, I'm there. And of course the other community connections that I have. So I would like to reach out to you after today and see how we can collaborate further and make it this more, you know, strong, solid collaboration. So I'll reach out to you guys. So,
Thank you. That'd be great if we can connect and figure out how we can collaborate. I appreciate that.
thank you.
So Cliff, you had a multi-point question.
Yeah, and that's part of it's been answered, but you know, entrepreneurs have great ideas for some great new businesses, and that is wonderful. And this program is, I think, great. And I've often advocated for this type of program. So this entrepreneur who goes into this program and begin to learn about all the aspects of business, of starting a business, of running a business, it can be overwhelming to some, and some may get discouraged. So my question is, do you have the means to get down to the nuts and bolts if someone needs that? And I think you may have answered part of that, you know, or is it referred out? For example, do you have a partnership where you can refer someone to the SBA who could help you with a business, or maybe to the association, the Veteran Administration, VA, who would definitely help military and veterans do these types of things? Do you have those types of resources for entrepreneurs?
So within the Center for Business and Innovation, we have over a dozen resources, including the Procurement Technical Assistance Center for Washington, which is a statewide government contracting program. We have the SBA Small Business Development Center, the SBA Women's Center. We have an investment network. We have a lot of different resources in-house. And so usually we can help them in-house with either the coaching or with other programs. In terms of referrals, we do have an amazing referral network. And so, for example, the makerspace is actually up the street, is under our financial umbrella. And so if we get someone up the street there that makes, the newest, 3D prints the newest widget, now we can refer them out to Impact Washington to look for small batch manufacturers. And so that's the kind of strategic, partnerships we try to create. In terms of, and yes, I mean, that's absolutely, a major issue is people do get discouraged in the process. And so we try to, keep them engaged with the multiple resources in the coaching, and make sure that they do have all of the support they need. On the flip side of that, we don't want them to be obsessed with the resources for too long either. We want them to get out there and start their business. And then when they need our help, come back and ask for it. And so, and I mean, there are percentages here. And so not, I'm guilty as anyone. In my 20s, I probably, tried to start 6 or 7 businesses, and that never really, got them off the ground. And so it's, there's a small percentage, and it does take a special person to be an entrepreneur. And so, there's always, it's on the flip side of it, it actually makes sense for people to go through this program and discover that this isn't the right choice for them, because being a small business owner, as many of you know, is, it's a 60, 70 hour a week job. And so, they may find out that's not for them. They don't want to give up that hobby, or their family, they need to take, too much time for their family or whatever. So I think the support system and referral system is definitely in place.
Thank you.
Oh, and I think that's also where the mentorship would come in, because if they have a peer mentor, an accountability partner, I'd like to think of it like weight loss. There should be somebody that they should be answering to, kind of, sort of, if this is the plan that I plan to do within this week, then next week, check back in and see if I did that, and I'll do the same for you. So, yeah.
And that part of the Small Business Development Center, business advising, and the coaching through the Women's Center definitely is that. And it intends to be that point of contact. And that's, one of the things is, starting and running a business can be a lonely endeavor. And so it is nice to have that support and be able to, just check in with someone. And that's, I think that's very important. I think that's, something that we strive to provide as well.
I have a question, but I want to see if there are any other hands up that I don't see on my screen. Is there anyone else with a question? Well, I'm curious to know if in your database, can you tell me what percentage of businesses in the city, in the Lacey area and its environs, that are BIPOC, as you label them that way?
So we have 4 different databases in our world. And I don't know if was that question directed to me or to Rick and Wesley?
Whichever 3 of you can provide the answer. Would you like me to kick that question to Rick?
Yeah, we have about just over 1,400 businesses in the city of Lacey, and one of the challenges we have in our business data is we go through state business license, and then other, as Sean says, there's multiple different databases with different types of information. So it's really difficult to discern a direct percentage of how many are BIPOC or owned businesses or else. And so that's some of the efforts we're going to be doing this coming year, is try to develop that database and figure out what is our business mix and who's out there, so that we can better provide services and access and be able also to communicate better. That's one of the things too that we are looking to develop, is different ways of communicating, so that not everybody responds to email, not everybody comes to a meeting. Some people work with text messaging or other forms of communication. So we're trying to figure out how we can best tailor that communication to reach all the various audiences. And that's one of the things that Wesley has been working on and will continue to work on over this year. And hopefully we can report back by the end of the year some of those results of that effort, as well as we also provide updates on our cohorts as they go through the training and what the results of those training programs have been over the year as well.
Yeah, and I would say that most of the data would not doesn't capture that type of information. We will have to go out there and and knock on doors and ask people and have a conversation with them. And they will probably not going to give us the information on a first or second visit. It will be a relationship where they would share those information with us. So that's an ongoing project. But for one of Sean's program, the Ptac program, a lot of the business have to be certified by state OMWBE, which is the state certification for women or minority-owned businesses. And there are some businesses that are there that are in Thurston County. And you can, if you go to our website, you can run a report and filter out. But most of those businesses are usually contracting for to the public for construction projects or other public work projects that they would submit project for. They're not like a brick and mortar type business.
Well, as an equity commission, we're concerned about, the full participation of all of our citizens, and business ownership, entrepreneurship are certainly ways that economic parity can be achieved. And so I know it's difficult to arrive at, but at some point, unless we can identify what are the obstacles, or if there are Bi-Pac populations trying to go into business and can't make it, or if some have tried it 4 or 5 times and not succeeded, why didn't they succeed? What were the issues? What help could they have used that you might have now that didn't exist back then? So that kind of data is going to be of interest to us as we move through working in the city from an equitable point of view. So it's difficult to get at, but I think the city and all the components would benefit from having some idea of how equitable our business distributions are in the city. So thank you all very much.
And I'll just add that I can't give you city information, but I can give you client information on our clientele based on the centers. So all the centers have abilities to filter out, on clientele percentages. And so if you ask me how many, residents of Lacey, in the different categories, went through a program of training or coaching in the Women's Center, I can get you that information pretty readily. And same thing for the Scale Up program, same thing for the Procurement Technical Assistance program, but we don't have the citywide data, unfortunately. That's why we need more people to use our services so we can, see get the bigger picture.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, even looking through the Secretary of State or looking through the Department of Revenue, you're not going to find that information unless they get certified. You're not going to find it because, even with my business directory that I have, the purpose of doing that was because we needed to be able to identify who's BIPOC, and whether they are registered with the Secretary of State, or maybe they're just so new they haven't done all those steps yet, but they are Black-owned business or Indigenous-owned business. Working with the chambers, we wanted to be able to give that signification because they may not all be able to be able to apply to even be a part of a chamber. That might be an expense they may not be able to afford. And so, trying to get those resources and everything out there for them free of charge, if at all, or as low a cost as I can, try and find, maybe something that may help them to get ahead. But that means that we have to be open to share that information. And a lot of times that's something they may have to pay a consultant for.
And there's no one way to, like as you just described, to pick up all that information. One of the traditional methods for our economic development programs is our business retention expansion programs. We're trying to get out and do business walks. And of course, that's been curtailed in the last couple of years with the COVID pandemic, but is to break up the city and go out and visit businesses periodically just to check in and see how they're doing. But that doesn't capture all the business owners, because as I think you mentioned before, not everybody has a brick and mortar. Some are working out of their home, some are working their current day job as they launch their business. So trying to figure out all those different avenues of portals. And I think that's something too, as we start working down that effort, we want to be able to work with the commission also to figure out how we can also make those connections and pull that information together and you know, figure out those channels that we can work at so we get better information for not only our work, but the commission's work and the city as a whole.
Thank you.
What
Are there
about
any other
community?
questions or comments?
Go ahead, Annie.
I had one, and Rick, I don't know if you can answer this, but I'm interested in the contracts that the city of Lacey let. That what are the percentages of BIPOC and women-owned businesses that get you know, honored those awarded those contracts?
We could see what we can do. We could find those information. Are you talking about just contracts in general, that like contracting for city services?
Yeah.
City contract within the businesses for services?
Yeah.
We have different
Construction,
Yeah.
you know, or whatever.
We have various different divisions within the various departments that all do different various contracting. We don't have a centralized area. So
I see.
there's the kind of information we can probably look to try to see how we can, in essence, create a clearinghouse so we can report back what we're doing. We don't have a system in place right now that would capture that unless we go back through every department and do an audit of past contracting.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's a good
Yeah.
idea, is to trying to figure out what we're doing as well. And as far as
If we're generating business, yeah.
And to that point, so I mean, when we're talking about those minority certifications and women-owned business certifications, they really are government contracted oriented. And so I would encourage businesses to self-certify if they're not interested in going after a government contract, because the certifications aren't necessarily that easy to get, to be honest. They can be quite time consuming. And I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding that, you know, of the benefit when you can just self-certify your business and make life a lot easier.
So what do you mean by self-certified? Do you mean not going through the OMWBE certification, but you just claim yourself as a minority?
Yeah.
I see. Oh.
But that would make a difference if you were trying to get government business.
Yes, if you're trying to get,
So if you're not trying to get government contracts, you could self-identify, basically. Yeah.
So I just have a quick two questions. First to Rick. So you don't have stats as far as number of contracts being awarded to people of color or minority or, you know, small business. But do you have plan to do that? I mean, I think that'll give you some ideas of the equitable contracts, maybe, you know, the number of population versus contract being awarded. Maybe that could be one indication of equitable. So I'm just wondering if you have planned to collect that data somehow so that it can be,
we'll take a look at what we can do, because a lot of our contracting has to go through either small works rosters or public bidding processes, and we can see what we're doing currently in terms of awarding some of those contracts and figure out what those statistics are and then what we need to do going from there.
My next question real quick with either Wesley or Sean. So when you have these resources, workshops and so forth, how do you reach out? I mean, how do people find out that you even offer this unless you happen to run into it? Or, you know, I don't know what kind of a concerted effort you did to reach people of, you know, the underrepresented community. What is your plan of reaching out to them?
And I think that's part of, you know what I mean, the concern and issue here is, you know, that we aren't getting to the community. So we do all of the, you know, standard marketing procedures, the email blasts, the press releases, and the, you know, get picked up by the magazines, the, you know, social media, whatever it is. But yeah, there is, you know, an issue with getting into that community and building trust. So the new position that we were able to hire through the Thurston County ARPA funding is the BIPOC Business Community Liaison. And so she's tasked with, you know, starting to build those bridges. And so to make the, to build relationships with the community partners, to be able to then use those community partners to disseminate all of the, resources. And, that's something that we need to do a better job at. Because it's, not everyone's going to be able to access the resources through the traditional marketing methods. So that's the first step. And hopefully once Myra starts to, get into her position fully, she'll be able to start to understand better how to either change the resources or do marketing in a way that's going to make sure that we're reaching everyone equitably.
Yeah,
Maybe we can help with that too, because that's, one of our tasks now is to be doing this small focus group, some other ways to get the communication from the citizens. And so maybe we'll stumble on some good things. We'll tell you.
We definitely would be leveraging that in the future for the next cohort to get your support to distribute the information. But on the first cohort, I've sent to Makeda's and other startup businesses that I've gathered last year and over the year or so that been working with the city. So I have that set of information. So I email a lot of folks that just started business, but I leverage some of our local business providers. So Equity for Enterprise is another organization that I send email to them. I also send email to other partners like the South Sound Foundations to share the information as wide as possible. So in the first cohort with that information, we were able to get a lot of interest. And with Myra being on as the Bi-Pac business liaison, she also sent out to a lot of her connections. So we got a lot, but we definitely will use your connection as well to disseminate the information in the future cohorts.
Yeah, I would also like to add maybe doing some outreach because going to where they are is going to be key. I know that I've been approached as a small business person at a farmer's market before, because I get comments a lot of times at a farmer's market where they're like, oh, there's not a lot of people of color here. And if they are, it might be a farmer somewhere or what have you. So, maybe scouting a farmer's market, you might find one or two, but you're not going to find a bunch. But if you go to maybe some cultural programs that are out there or events that are out there, maybe even get a booth at them, just to give out that information, it might be worth the time doing that at a vendor event.
Well, we probably have run over our time that was allocated for this item, but some great discussion and some great questions came up. And Shannon, I'll turn, go to our next item then, item 4B. We have other guests. Is great.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean, Wesley, and Rick. We look forward for future information as it becomes available to you. Shannon?
Chair Jackson, we do have our Chief of Police, Robert Almata, and our Deputy Chief of Police, Robert Hollis, joining us right now for your second item.
Wonderful.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having us. We're very excited and we have a lot of information for you. If it gets to be too much, let us know. We can always come back. But we have a lot of good stuff to share with you. And we're pretty excited to do it. I'm going to share my screen if that's okay. Please let me know if you can see it.
Yes.
The title slide. Okay. All right. Off to a good start. Excellent. Okay. All right. Just to introduce myself, my name is Robert Almata. I have over 30 years of law enforcement experience. I spent the first 29 years of my career with the Santa Monica Police Department. Started as a police cadet, which is similar to a community service officer here in Lacey, and worked all my way up to a captain over the years, and did a lot of interesting stuff along the way. Won't bore you with the stories, but did lots of interesting stuff. In October 2019, came to the city of Lacey as the Deputy Chief of Police. Really enjoyed being Deputy Chief. It was rather short-lived, unfortunately. The chief that hired me got ill, I was asked to become the interim chief of police in early 2020 with the advent of COVID. And I served as the interim chief of police until May of this year, 2021. And then I was made the permanent chief of police. My educational background is I have a bachelor's in business and finance from Cal State Long Beach. I have a master's of public administration from Cal State Northridge. And I have a certificate in leadership from the Drucker Institute at Claremont Graduate University. I'm on a number of boards and committees here in the city of Lacey and county of Thurston, including the Mental Health Services Treatment Sales Tax Advisory Board to the county commissioners. I'm also part of an initiative called Advancing Pretrial Policy and Research. And this is a research action site looking at alternatives to monetary bail to find more equitable solutions to the criminal justice system, and really putting an emphasis on pretrial release for folks who are in the criminal justice system. I'm also a member of the National Racial Equity Roundtable for this group, and I'm also on the communications committee for this group. And so that's a little bit about me. We'll get a little bit about stuff as we move along, but it's my honor to also introduce today, who's with us, is our Deputy Chief of Police, Robert Bobby Hollis, and he's with us.
Good evening, everyone. As Chief said, I'm Deputy Chief Robert Hollis, but everyone calls me Bobby, so please, if I see you out in the world, it's okay to call me Bobby. I don't have a problem with that. I've been in law enforcement for about 20 years and change. My last agency was with Kent Police Department, and one of my jobs there, I was the race and equity commander for that department, and in that role, I went out and worked with underserved and underrepresented groups out in the community. But internally, I was also one of the few people that provided lessons or discussion points on things such as implicit bias. I had the opportunity to go through a courageous conversations training that was taught by Glenn Singleton, and provide some information and knowledge to a lot of officers internally. The last training that I also was able to bring to Kent was from a group called the Arbinger Institute, where they focus on a outward mindset versus an inward mindset. And basically what it really boils down to is trying to get officers or people to understand that there are different perspectives out there in the world and how that can affect us in our everyday dealings. For me, education-wise, I have a sociology degree from the University of Washington. I have my executive master's in public administration, also from the University of Washington. And some of my current projects right now is the body-worn video in-car cam program. I'm helping work on some of our lexical policies that surrounds body-worn camera, and to get a lot of our other policies up to date. And then my biggest project is starting work or being the project manager for our new police station. I am still soliciting some community members for that group. So if anyone might be interested, please feel free, shoot me an email, give me a call, and I'm more than happy to have you on that board. So Chief, back to you.
Yeah, there may be some commercials in our presentation where we're asking for assistance and feedback and participation. So hope you don't mind. So yeah, you've got a really interesting command team, and myself and the deputy chief. I was fortunate enough to facilitate discussions back in Santa Monica as part of a learning institute of managers and supervisors there, and conflict resolution, implicit bias, ethics and leadership. And we bring that to our new positions here at the city of Lacey. And it's an exciting place to work. It is one of the most diverse cities in Thurston County. And thus, we also have worked really to have the most diverse police department of all the agencies in Thurston County. It's something we're quite proud of. And we're going to talk some more about some of that as we move along. So our agenda today is talk a little bit about the organization as an overview, so you guys get a good idea of what your police department looks like. Talk about our staffing profile and our demographics. Talk about our hiring data from 2020 to present, things that we've been able to accomplish in the last 3 years, or 2 years and change. Really talking about our principles in action. We don't just talk the talk, we walk the walk, and we hope to show you that today. Talk about some of the pandemic and legislative impacts that we've been through in the last couple of years, and then give you a glimpse of 2021 activity. I have a lot of slides, and I'm going to try to breeze through them and then ask whatever questions you want to ask, and we will blast through them and answer them. And like I said, we're happy to come back and have further conversations. So anywhere you want to say, stop, you want to talk about that some more, please do. So we're going to get started. Okay, let's just look at the organization. This is our org chart. As you can see, we've got approximately 60 commissioned officers, about a dozen civilians. We have another 10 plus senior volunteers called Lacey Resource Officers. We also have an Explorer program, which is post high school into early college, giving folks an idea of what it's like to be in law enforcement. We have, besides patrol, we have 2 school resource officers with a vacancy for 1 more. We have 2 community resource unit officers who do community engagement as well as homeless outreach. Working with our community resource officers, those 2 officers, is our MOT, which is our mobile outreach team, which is a team that we contract with through Olympic Health and Recovery Services. And that's 2 two-person teams, and I'll speak some more about that in a little bit. As you can see, we have 5 detectives working in that section. We have a traffic officer, we have a space for 1 more. And currently we have spots for 6 CSOs. We have 4, but 2 of those are going to the academy because they've now transitioned into recruit police officers, which is really exciting for us because frankly, in the past, our CSOs, our community service officers, have left the department to go for other agencies. We've really worked hard to work on internal career paths for both our civilian and for our commissioned officers. Really making sure that we keep talent inside the organization and given more opportunities for growth and development. So we're very excited about this trend. So let's see, anything else? So I've got 2 folks in the academy. One's graduating on Wednesday. I've got 2 more in backgrounds with conditional offers. I've got 4 more people staged to go into the academy in the next few months that are currently going through pre-academy training with us. And then I have 3 more additional officer openings, and then we'll have all our positions filled at that point. So pretty exciting. The department hasn't been fully staffed in many years, and we added some positions. So frankly, you'll see 2 positions highlighted here called succession. Those are contextually overhire positions that we fill. That's part of the 3 that I'm trying to fill currently, because we get a very short duration notice of officers retiring. Generally, the tradition is only to give 2 weeks notice. And it takes, as you know, a very long time to hire a police officer. And I'll kind of go through that process a little bit, but that's why we have those 2 succession spots. Okay, let's talk about our racial data that I referred to earlier. And we are primarily a white, city of Lacey. However, we've got between 6 and 8% Black. We've got another 12.5 to 14% Hispanic. We have Pacific Islander. We have Asian. We have everything else. We have a great representation in our city. LGBTQ. Just really a great variety and variety of folks here, which really is to our benefit. It's one of the great, wonderful things about living in the city of Lacey. And this is from the last census, which is our most recent data. We also use data from the local school district, North Thurston County School District, North Thurston School District, because we think the new generations coming up is very reflective of what we want to also work to make sure we emulate. So this is our current ethnic and racial data. You'll notice it's very similar to what I just described to you. We have a little over 8% Black. We've got, like myself, Hispanic folks, almost 9% there. And we've got Asian and Pacific Islander and Native American and of course, folks that are white. But again, it's really reflective of the community, which is what we really strive for. And that's our secret sauce when we go to hire folks. Everybody we hire has a connection to Lacey, some way, some shape or form. They went to school here, they were at JBLM, they shop here, they played ball here, their parents are here. It's just a number of ways. And they all have some type of touchstone base here to the city of Lacey. And that's what makes it truly community policing. Talking about gender, if you look at the entire department, we're about 70-30 from female to male. And that's including both civilians and commissioned officers. Looking at just commissioned officers, it's more like 20% female and 80% male. And that is something we're striving towards. You've heard of an initiative called 30-30. It's really working to get 30% of our commissioned officers being female. It's a tradition that I'm used to, frankly. That's how I grew up, was in a department that was 30 to 40% female at all levels of the organization. And that's certainly something we're striving for here in the city of Lacey. Hiring demographics from 2020 to present, you are going to see a lot here. So we've hired, like in 2020, we hired 9 officers and 4 civilians. 2021, 4 officers, 2 civilians. And so far this year, we've hired 5 officers. And you'll note about a third of the commissioned officers, 6 of the 18 have been female. And of the civilian, all of them were female. And also, we try to have a good balance between our lateral and entry-level officers. Again, about a third of them are lateral officers and 2/3 of them are entry-level. And looking at the spread, again, you're going to have a great diversity of the folks that we hired. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So let's talk about gender equity in those hires. Of the commissioned officers, like I said, 6 of the 18 were female on the civilian, and this shows, when you look at everybody, it was half and half to male to female. As far as ethnicity, looking at the chain at that, of all commissioned officers hired, 8 were white, 2 were black, 4 were Asian, and 4 were white/Hispanic, since Hispanic is an ethnicity and not a race, which is something I kind of always bristle at, frankly, personally, but I have to kind of get used to it. We still include it, frankly, because I think it's important for that diversity. As far as our civilians hired, 4 were white, 1 was Asian, 1 was Hispanic. And when you look at the diversity all together, you see that although half were white, the other half were of various races and ethnicities. Still going. Okay. So, but when you get down to it, this I think is the most telling stat of what our diversity in hiring is. Of the 24 people we've hired to date from 2020 to date, only 4 have been considered male white. Everybody else is some other type of diversity hire. And it's reflected here as far as race and ethnicity, but we also look for diversity of upbringing and background and mindset and education and life experience. So we're really making sure that we have a good diversity of life view coming to the department with everybody with the service orientation. Talking about some new programs in 2021 and 2022. I'm just kind of changing gears here a little bit. Really working on our recruitment, selection, hiring process. As you can see, we've hired a lot of people. The city of Lacey, traditionally, the police department has hired 1 or 2 people a year for years. And it wasn't until we really looked at what the needs were for the community and realizing we wanted to make sure we filled all the slots, really gearing up our hiring. And we've hired, like I said, 18 people since 2020 in the middle of a pandemic. When other agencies can't get any candidates, we are still attracting candidates. It is a special place to work, and folks realize that. And people are very excited about coming to the city of Lacey, and we're not offering bounties to people like other agencies. We hire a fair wage, but really it's the working conditions. The city of Lacey likes its police officers. It's a good place to work. And the city of Lacey police officers loves its community. And that's what makes Lacey so special. So some things we've done for our recruitment, selection, and hiring, in-person recruitment written tests. I'm the only police chief that goes to written tests. I don't ever see another police chief at the written test. I usually go to the local ones and ones to be 1 county away. And I'll go and I'll tap, various folks on the shoulder and say, hey, you look good wearing a Lacey patch on your arm. Why don't you check our box to send your test results to the city of Lacey? And let me tell you how great Lacey is. And I give a big spiel to the whole group, how great it is to work in Lacey and how we are not only an inclusive agency, we are a welcoming agency. And that's important to me and to everybody on my command staff and at my agency here in the city of Lacey, that folks are not only included, but they're welcomed. And people can see themselves being successful here, not just accepted, not just tolerated, but welcomed and fully appreciated for what they bring to our team. Also, we pay a test fee. The test fee for folks that ask for send their test results to the city of Lacey. It's a small fee, it's 10 or 20 bucks, it's not a lot, but it's just takes away one of those barriers for folks finding some financial disincentives not to take a test. We also streamlined the hiring and background process. I've looked at the process quite a bit. I got rid of automatic disqualifiers that I thought were rather outdated, hadn't been looked at since the early 80s, and worked on that. I think there's a question.
Yeah, it's Kim. Thank you for your presentation. So I have a quick question about the written test.
Yes.
You know, I've seen some of the postings, job postings, where it'll say the ability to speak and write English language. And to me, I don't know, I haven't seen your posting yet, but to me that, because coming from immigrant background, that kind of gives you immediate, I guess, you know, assumption that English language is the only kind of like valued language. What about the other languages that you may not be really good at English language, but if you can speak other languages, because there are people in various community with different abilities. So I just don't know. I don't know the Lacey's, the job posting language, but I've seen that. I thought that was kind of like deterrent that the people with maybe, you know, less than quote unquote perfect English may think that, hey, I might not, you know, shoot for this one because it might not qualify.
So I hope you don't get accused of throwing me softballs, because that leads right into my next point. So that's a perfectly timed question.
Okay.
So really evaluating the weighting of our written and interview test scores. So some agencies will say we only want the creme de la creme of the written test. You have to pass with a 90% on the written test before you can get an interview with our agency, because we only take the best. Well, we take a little different point of view. We want to make sure that you pass the written test, because you've got to be able to speak English and write English effectively to be in law enforcement. You have to be able to write reports that the court can understand and correctly portray what the witness is saying and what you observed the suspect doing. It's really important. But doesn't mean you have to be a Rhodes Scholar and an English major, right? It means you have to be able to pass the test. So passing is 70%. So we've really looked at making sure that we don't create too high a barrier that prevents people that may have some disadvantage as far as it comes to written tests, but would be a very effective police officer. So that's why we really look at the weighting of the test, what you actually score on the written test, and then how much does that count in your overall score. And then really put a lot of emphasis on the interview, where you come in, you have your first interview, and you're talking right now to 2 Lacey police officers, but again, we're changing that, and I'll explain why. So I really want to make sure we're inclusive and we're not just getting a police mindset when we're talking to folks. And then you get through that, and you combine the 2 scores of both the written and then the oral interview. And then if you meet a minimum score, then you get to go talk to the chief. And then I talk to you about why do you want to be at Lacey, you know, what about the Lacey experience? And it's really more of a fit interview at that point, because I'm looking for, you know, are we a good fit for you? Are you a good fit for us? And are you going to be someone that I would want to talk to one of our citizens here that will really take care of them? Because really community caretaking is such a big part of what we do. And then, so leading to the next point. So on our interview boards, and I talked about the Lacey Resource Unit before, and these are primarily retired members of our community that have come back and generally had no real association with law enforcement in their regular careers. They were in the military, they were in telecom, they were school teachers, all those different members of the community, and now they want to volunteer. And so they come back and they do a variety of tasks at the police department. They help people at the front counter, they answer questions, they do paperwork. And I kind of feel that we're not really tapping on their life experience. And they also have diversity in their backgrounds. So I'm bringing them on board with this initial interview to get their perspective and their life experience to really be able to evaluate these folks. So we're not getting a strictly military, paramilitary organization view from a police officer point of view, because I want people. I don't want robots, right? And so that's a really important part of this. And I want to make sure that that's successful. Also in our interview process, we have something called Interview 101 that we're starting. And folks that it's their first interview maybe, and maybe they're not really used to doing police interviews or really interviewing for a government job, and they come close. They're not quite there. And otherwise, they have to wait a whole year to retest. So what we've said is, if you're willing to invest a couple of hours on a Saturday, we'll teach you how to do a good interview, what we're looking for in an interview, what you should be doing in a police interview, and then we'll allow you to re-interview within the same quarter. And see, not to give you the answers to the test, but more to tell you how to present yourself and how to present yourself and your background in its best light, how to really emphasize your skills and experience and abilities, and really put yourself in its best light and really tell us the things that we're trying to find out. Because what we find is folks have all this great diverse background and education and experience. They just don't know how to tell the story, put it into a really good narrative. So that's what this program does. It gives them that ability. Other programs that we spoke about is the mobile outreach team. These are mental health clinicians and peer support folks, and they go out and do homeless outreach, and they build on the success of the community resource unit. And I can tell you that we've had an amazing response. We had approximately 77 people living in various camps along the washed-out property along the freeway and in these various areas in the encampments throughout the city of Lacey. We went from 77 to 2 people, 77 people down to 2 living in these camps through the work of both CRU and the mobile outreach teams in the course of a year. Absolutely incredible results. And when I say there's no longer in the camp, it means they had a better outcome. We didn't shoo them along. We didn't trespass them. They were grandfathered in. They were allowed to stay there per the washed-out. But what we did is said, listen, we're going to come out. We're going to talk to you every day or so and make sure you're okay and offer you some better options. Offer to reconnect you with family and other support networks. Offer, see if you earned and qualified for other services that maybe you weren't aware of. Help you get your ID back. Help you get your identification papers back. Reset, getting your phone turned back on. All the little things that happen so you can get access to services we would facilitate. We've really been able to get folks in a lot better outcomes and better living situations, and we're very proud of that. Along with that is our rapid response teams through Public Works. So when you see graffiti, trash, abandoned campsites, they go in and take care of those so it doesn't attract more problems and issues. It's been very effective. As I kind of referenced we entered into MOUs with WashDOT and the Department of Ecology to really work on these encampments. And we have a traffic officer again. We didn't have a traffic officer for the better part of a couple of years, just because staffing was so low. But now with our effective hiring, we've been able to staff one of our traffic positions. And he's able to work with the schools and with some of our senior citizen facilities and really work on some of these other issues that are traffic related. So we're pretty happy about that. So really, I kind of referenced our community policing engagement model and community caretaking. My officers probably spent 60 to 70% of their time doing community caretaking and 30 to 4% of their time doing actual enforcement. It's a people-centered operation that we're engaged in. We're not an occupying army. That is an old policing model that doesn't work. We are truly based in the community and work with folks. The biggest compliment we get about our Lacey police officers is that they're just members of the community that happen to be wearing a uniform. They're just like everybody else, and that's what we really want. We don't want robots. We don't want yes or no, sir, just the facts, man kind of folks. We want people that can talk to people. All right. Now we're going to talk a little bit about 21st century policing. And you may have heard about this before, and there's really 6 pillars to 21st century policing. It's building trust and legitimacy. It's really the lifeblood of this police department. It's what the Commission of Equity, I think, is really about. It's about making sure that we're legit, right? We are who we are, what we say we are, and we do what we say we're going to do, and we treat people right. That's what this is all about. One of the other pillars is policy and oversight. The good deputy chief talked about that. So we're talking about Lexipol policy. And what Lexipol policy is really just a framework. It is a recognized framework for policies, and what our policy is what gets put into that framework. We've been recognized as having very contemporary and modern policies. We were recognized by WCIA when the new policing reforms came in as being one of the first agencies that had policies that reflected the new legislation. and we're very proud of that. The oversight that goes towards the body-worn camera project that we're instituting and the vehicle camera project. Again, we want transparency in everything we do. We do a great job. We want folks to be able to see it. So we really are pretty excited about the body-worn video program. That goes into technology and social media. You may notice that we're really quite present in social media these days. We want to make sure folks see the people side of their police department, and we want to highlight some of the funny stuff that happens. We want to highlight the personalities that are there, but also want to use that technology as a force multiplier to go after suspects so they can't endanger the community. And I think we're being pretty well recognized, frankly, for our use of social media on this effort. We're pretty pleased about that. Community policing and crime reduction obviously is a major pillar of being law enforcement because, like they said, the real reason for police is to prevent crime from happening, right? So we should be measured by the absence of crime, not by how well we respond to crime. And then training and education and officer wellness and safety. Let's explore those a little bit. So transparency and accountability measures. You've probably looked at our website and you've seen a number of documents talking about the police department, stemming from the murder of George Floyd and moving forward, and really talking about the steps that were already in place and things we've started to do to really make sure that, one, we're transparent in everything we do and we're accountable for our actions, and so that there's faith from the community and their police department. CJTC, that is the Criminal Justice Training Center. So we have a TAC officer, Officer Westfall, who is assigned full-time to the academy training new police officers. He has been tasked and is volunteered for to really talk about the history of law enforcement initiative. And that's really talking about the good and the bad of the history of law enforcement and teaching that to all law enforcement throughout the state. So it's a pilot program, it's brand new. And it's really making sure, turning the spotlight on law enforcement, saying, hey, you need to know your history. You need to know why folks, BIPOC folks may not be so warm and fuzzy towards police officers. There's a history you may not know about, and you may have not experienced because of your background, but you need to be aware of it and know what other folks may be harboring and may be aware of, and you're going to need to get past that and accept it and own it, and as part of our profession, and move past it. I talked a little bit about APPR, so I'll try not to beat that again. TST, I talked about that. All these different initiatives that are kind of, well, that's not going out and arresting people. No, I haven't talked about arresting people once. I'm talking about just being part of the community and letting folks know that we're here about community safety, not just putting people in jail. That's not what public safety is about. It's about people not having the fear of crime, let alone not having crime. So, hi, Kim, you had a question?
Sorry, I keep interrupting you here.
No, it's okay.
When you talk about these, it sounds really good. What I'm just gonna ask a direct question, because I know a lot of my friends who are immigrant and, small businesses, there's one person operation at sometimes working at a barbershop by herself and so forth. And of course, luckily I haven't seen horrible crimes here, but even in Tacoma, Lakewood, those people are being killed by being themselves and so forth. And I know that some of those people that I know, they are very afraid, obviously, right? And there's some trainings and information that could really help them what to do about situations and some of those best practices and things like that. But I haven't really seen anything like that reaching out to them for that level anywhere. Is there any kind of plans to, if something like that to happen, do you have any kind of preventive education that you are trying to reach out to those small businesses, especially with, LEP, limited English proficiency? How would you address those? Well,
fortunately, I have a lot of diverse speaking folks. That's one of the things I really emphasize. But also we have we have language translation services that we use, both live and also to translate documents. But yes, we're doing all sorts of outreach, and we'll be doing a lot more now we're coming out of the pandemic. That's really kind of put a hitch in our giddy up, frankly. We've had to really find some unique ways to do outreach to the community. and it's been difficult, to be frank. But I think that's really an opportunity that we have. We do a lot of outreach to the homeowner associations here in Lacey. That's kind of been the first layer. We created a data list with all businesses and our religious organizations and homeowner associations. And we made these large email lists to make sure that we could pump out information very quickly to them and keep them updated on what was going on. I added a civilian to the community resource unit. She's in charge of our social media and also working on that public outreach. And she's been doing a lot of that. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But definitely it's something we need to work on to make sure we're not just outreaching to large groups, but also to the smaller groups and some of the hidden community members.
So yeah, I would like to volunteer out at some point where to prepare even flyers where we can just directly be able to deliver to some of these businesses of concern. I guess you could use some community liaisons who knows the business in more personal level where they could kind of help relate that message. Of course, you can translate and have interpreter, but that doesn't always hit the meaning that you wanted to give. Just giving as a person who work as an interpreter at times. So anyway, I like to offer that help.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So let's see. So I talked about Westfall. Okay, so let's talk about the new legislation. So you probably heard about the new policing legislation that came out last July, and we really embraced the intent behind the policing reforms. We brought in all the different the leaders from all the police departments in Thurston County and their number twos and their legal counsel and the prosecutor. And I brought them all into the Lacey community room and I said, listen, we need to talk about the new legislation and make sure we all see it the same way. So that when you get stopped on one side of Martin Way and it's Lacey, you get treated the same way as if you get stopped on the other side and you get stopped by a sheriff deputy because you're now in the county area or you're in Olympia or whatever. We got to make sure, we want to make sure that folks know they're being going to be treated the exact same way and the law is going to be enforced the same way. So we really embraced not only the letter of the law, but the intent behind the policing reforms. We really read the messages that were actually incorporated in the legislation from the legislature. With that, there were some difficulties, right? We lacked a clear definition of physical force. We lacked a use of force policy. That's not due to come out until, frankly, this July from the Attorney General's office. And the Attorney General has already come out and said, there's some problems with coming up with a definition because it's unclear. So we think we landed upon a pretty clear definition of physical force, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. We really worked on de-escalation and minimal use of force, which has always been the hallmark, frankly, of the Lacey Police Department. I've always kind of, I talked to Representative Goodman and Johnson. We kind of said, you probably should have adopted the Lacey model. It probably would have accomplished everything you wanted to accomplish because we're pretty proud of it. We use force very rarely. We de-escalate folks quite a bit. We do a lot of crisis intervention training. We do a lot of crisis intervention, frankly. We talk a lot with people. We don't use force. We don't go to action immediately unless someone is in danger. We comprehensively document and review all uses of force. Anything beyond compliant handcuffing or compliant moving someone from point A to point B, we document it. And we are some agencies, unless there's a complaint of pain or an injury, they don't document the force. We document everything and we review it to make sure it's appropriate and that our folks are doing exactly what they should be doing. And we work to minimize law enforcement interaction with non-criminal matters. And that's what we brought on the mobile outreach team to really, when you didn't need a police officer to respond, let's have this mobile outreach team respond that are not police officers, not in uniform, but are actual social service providers who provide mental health services. And it's been a pretty effective model. These are the accountability measures that I referred to earlier from the website. Talked about our Department of Diversity, talked about the 8 Can't Wait initiatives, of which we are following pretty much all of them. Our department training and our use of force analysis. We put that all on blast so folks can see exactly what's going on at their police department. Again, we're trying to be transparent and in partnership with the community, which is why we have the community advisory panel that the deputy chief talked about. We want to make sure they're involved in the design of this new police station and what the purpose of the new police station is. If you look at the current police station that was, we moved into in 1985 when we were a third of our size, it's dark. It's not very inviting. It's not community based, and it's not welcoming. And we got to change that. It's got to be a place where folks feel safe. It's a sanctuary space. People can come and have public discourse, not be in fear for their safety. They can do custody exchanges. They can do e-commerce, have public gatherings, all those kind of things that need to happen in that safe space. And that's what this new station needs to really be. We have that opportunity by creating this new building, and that's what we want this new community advisory panel to be part of. Really, like I talked about, enhancing our social media presence and public engagement at events. Our school resource officer is engaging with the Black Student Union for one of the first times in a long time at River Ridge High School. We've been trying for quite a while, frankly, to have those conversations. With this last set of demonstrations that occurred, we really stepped back. And I reached out to the organizers of this, one of the parents, and said, listen, I want to make sure it's a safe event. I want to make sure you folks have an opportunity to be heard and get your message out and to be safe when you're doing it, because the Lacey Police Department is here to protect your constitutional rights. And all the other issues are with the school, right? And I know the president, the president of this committee and I have had conversations about that demonstration. And it didn't maybe always go the way we would have wanted, but I think it started a good conversation. And because they saw the police department weren't automatically siding with the administration, we were objective, we're just here to protect everybody's rights. I think we kind of gained some clout and credibility with the Black Student Union, because they've reached out to our school resource officer and said, hey, can we have a conversation about constitutional rights and how should we act when we contact the police, and what are our rights? And let's hear about what you're talking about, police officer. And if you know Aaron Perneda, one of our school resource officers, he's pretty excited about the opportunity. And we're pretty excited about having that opportunity to have that level of engagement. We're hoping to build upon it. Other things that we're engaged in are pardons, to be frank. Came up today. Mr. Temujin Kensu, also known as Frederick Freeman. He is a national and worldwide speaker on incarceration, improper incarceration, and bias and basically wrongs in the criminal justice system. He was actually rightfully convicted of a felony back in 1981. But if you look at the circumstances, he's done an awful lot of things to make it right. So he's asked to be pardoned. He's got a pardon in front of the state. And we looked at the circumstances and said, yeah, you've repaid everything, you've done everything you're supposed to do. Absolutely. Why wouldn't we endorse that pardon? So we've, instead of taking a no stance or a neutral stance as law enforcement normally does, we want to right a wrong. And if he was, if he's turned his life around and he admits what he did was wrong, and we'll go into details of it, this thing's over almost 40 years old now. And this guy has made a great life for himself and turned his life around and done some great things since that. Yeah, let's get past this one felony, because it's preventing him from actually traveling internationally to do some things he needs to do, to talk about some of these things that are going on in our society and actually make some real change. So if we can be part of that, heck yeah, we're going to do that. So we're putting in an endorsement for that pardon. Talked about some of the technology enhancements. Recently, we made sure that each one of our officers got a brand new laptop that's individualized for them. Before, it was try to find the computer that has the program you need to use that actually works. We had like 4. And so now every officer has their own laptop, and it's about having that technology able to, and actually implementing it and using it to your best advantage. We're looking at replacing our record management system and our community dispatch system. And that is a countywide project. We're getting a new radio system, which is enhanced, 800 megahertz band, and I won't get into the wonky stuff about it, but it's cool and it's better. We, as you know, in the legislation, we lost certain parts of our less lethal our 40 millimeter launcher, our less lethal shotguns that fired a slingshot or a flex round. We lost that for various reasons because of a technical definition issue. So we immediately implemented something called an FN 303 pneumatic launcher, which is basically like a large paintball gun, for lack of a better term. And so I wanted to make sure we had some type of less lethal option. So we did that very quickly and got our folks trained up on it very quickly. We were one of the first agencies in the area to get it, to make sure we had a less lethal alternative. I didn't want to have to fall back to lethal alternatives if it wasn't appropriate. We have progressive and contemporary training, which we're very proud of. During COVID, couldn't get classes together. And we couldn't do a lot of offsite training with other agencies. So we went to the Dolan online training program, where officers were able to do that online training through a lot of different techniques and make sure we kept our training up to date and modern and contemporary, because we didn't want to fall behind. Also, we worked on conflict de-escalation. We make sure we recognize our officers for not using force. And this is important. You get what you recognize. You get what you award medals for and recognition for. And I know you've always seen, officer given medal for shooting and officer given medal for this and that. But usually it was an assertive act, right? Well, I've recognized my officers for not using force when, frankly, they would have been more than in their rights to use force for the situation, but they were able to de-escalate it and use other techniques to bring about a positive resolution to the situation. And I think that says a lot. You get what you recognize. And so I really want to reinforce not using force when appropriate and when possible. We work on our implicit bias recognition and response. And one of the things that's kind of out of the box that we plan on doing now that we're getting out of the pandemic is taking everyone at the department to the Holocaust Museum in Seattle. I went through a similar program in Los Angeles where you went through the Museum of Tolerance, which is very similar. It's an analog to the Holocaust Museum. And it really talks about bias and what happens when it takes its full measure through the cycle and what can happen if you don't stand up to it and stop it. And it's really important. And I'm looking forward to it. And I'm hoping to stimulate some really good conversations and some really good active thinking from that trip. So I'm looking forward to that. And officer wellness and safety, which is important. We really work on our officers to make sure that they have access to services, because it's a stressful job. We go through a lot of different things. And so we have the Employment Assistance Program, which gives them access to mental health services. We have the Critical Incident Stress Management Team, which is both in-house and also we're expanding to regional. Sometimes you can't talk to your buddy about it because they might know a little too much. So you want to talk to someone outside of the department. But with CISM, you have a letter of confidentiality that's important to that type of therapy session. We also have the Northwest Therapy Group, which is another level of services for first responders. And now we have TRIP. This is our newest addition. TRIP is a Bernese mountain dog, part poodle, and he's 3 months old. And we just started with him last week. He belongs to one of our civilian employees. He's a service dog in training. And we're helping with his socialization, and he's going to represent the department. And so he stays with his adult keeper throughout the day. She brings him to work and keeps him close, and employees get to go up and pet him. And I got to tell you, whenever he's in the room, people light up. It has been an incredible week. So we're pretty excited. We took him to an event on Saturday, Hogs and Hounds at the Howley dealership, where he got to see several other dogs from Joint Animal Services get adopted, which was exciting. We did demonstrations, and he just was a really good pup. And we're pretty excited about Trip. So, all right. Now we can
have a question from Commissioner Hart.
Yes, Hart. Commissioner Hart.
Sorry, not really a question, but the Holocaust Museum you guys will love. I've been to the one in DC, and it's quite emotional. So yeah, I think you're gonna love that. And I also miss Officer Westfall. He got to see pretty much all 3 out of 4 of my kids graduate from River Ridge, and was there for the last one that's still there for her freshman year before COVID. And my last comment is, I think you guys, everything that you've been talking about I didn't realize you guys did so much. I mean, I knew that this was a good area, but I didn't realize how much. And I have a few people that I know that work for the Lacey PD and a couple of people that I know that work for Ole PD. And I mean, it's pretty calm and quiet around here. And even during the unrest, it was just really, I never felt afraid. So, you know, being in Lacey and just to hear all the things that you guys have employed already makes me really, really happy to be a part of unincorporated Thurston County, but the city of Lacey still. So I'm proud of my city and happy for all the accomplishments you guys have done thus far, and look forward to everything you guys have going for you in the future.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Yeah, we're proud. We're very proud of our department, but humble at the same time, frankly, for the opportunity to serve. Thank you so much. So 2021, pandemic and legislation. Wow, lots of impacts, lots of challenges, but a lot of opportunities too, right? So from the pandemic, we had widespread access to vaccine allows an ending of the lockdowns. That was a big change. And then communities still working from home or hybrid model, although it looks like there's some light at the end of the tunnel now, which is pretty cool. Custodial facilities are still limiting the booking of both non-violent and non-mandated offenses. So let's just talk about that a little briefly, right? So if I arrest you for DUI or domestic violence, that's a mandated arrest and they must take you at the jail. If I arrest you for shoplifting, they don't have to take you because it's a non-violent offense. And even if I arrest you for commercial burglary, they might not keep you very long because of the required to keep the populations at the jails fairly low. So those are some of the challenges we've kind of been facing, right? So again, you can't arrest your way out of some issues. And we've learned that, right? Homelessness is a good example. It's a social issue. You can't arrest your way out of homelessness. It just doesn't work. It's not an appropriate response. You can't criminalize homelessness, and it's not an effective response. And I can go on for hours about that. I got lots of experience about that. So like warrants for low-level offenses were not being confirmed, which means that even though that person you stopped may have a warrant for their arrest, if the agency doesn't confirm it, you can't take that person to jail. So that was one of the pandemic effects. And then with the new legislation, of course, there was dramatic police reform that happened mid-year, and it was an emergency start. There was no, in 60 days, as of date of signing, you got to go. Make it happen. Retrain all your folks, redo all your policy, and change the way you've been doing policing forever, and go to this new model. And it was quite a big change, to be frank. But we ran with it, and we said, okay, let's adopt this model and do the best we can for what we got. The new legislation model really emphasizes post-crime response versus intervention and being proactive. Again, that's really, we're supposed to be about the absence of crime, not responding after the fact. So this is kind of tough. And like I said, the new legislation didn't define physical force. We had to do that on our own. So with our legal advisors, and we thought was best practices, we created, I think, a pretty good definition of force that I'm going to read to you in a little bit. And it's going to be really familiar when they talk about the new definition that came up in the legislation. And I'll tell you why in a little bit. So, and then the detentions require a probable cause standard, not a reasonable suspicion standard. So in every movie you've ever seen, you've seen an officer see somebody acting really strangely and they go, haha, there's probably criminal actions afoot. I should go talk to that person. Well, now you can't do that. Now you have to wait for an actual crime to detain that person. So you have to have probable cause, which means you could arrest them in order to detain them. And that's a pretty tough standard. So we have a lot of people just walking away from us when we go to talk to them, and we don't have a crime to charge them with, so they just get to walk away. So unfortunately, it's a very difficult time, and you've probably seen a lot of stories in the news about that. However, the new legislation we're hoping is going to help address some of those issues. We've been working hard behind the scenes with legislators and testifying at hearings and things to really address that. So moving to professional standards, and I think this is where I think the data really speaks, and I hope that you'll say so too. So our complaints, we'll start there. So our historical average is around 10 complaints a year. Last several years, it's been around under that. And this year, or for 2021, we had 6. There were 6 formal complaints, 0 informal complaints. And like I said, the 10-year average is 11.6 actually. Of those 6 complaints, 3 were courtesy related, 2 involved the use of force, and 1 was an alleged policy violation. Of those 6 complaints, 3 were unfounded, 1 was sustained, and 2 are currently still under investigation. Of the 6 complaints, 4 were sourced from sources external to the department, and 2 were internal, meaning that after we reviewed documents, we said, this is a policy violation, we need to conduct an investigation. Moving on to uses of force. So this is pretty interesting. So the Lacey Police Department in 2021 responded to over 38,000 incidents. That means traffic stops, talking to people on the street, radio calls, 911 calls, the, oh my God, help me, 911 call, right? All those, of that, we had like 38,000 of them in 2021. For just those few officers I showed you on the organization chart, right? After that, we took almost 6,000 reports in 2021 documented. So around actual 5,840, we'll round it up to 6,000. So, and we made about 1,229 arrests in 2021. Out of all that, we only used force 38 times. 38 times. We were out on almost 40,000 incidents where we took almost 6,000 reports and we made over 1,200 arrests. We only used force 38 times. That's amazing. And that's fantastic. And that's the quality of your police department. And that's frankly a big reduction from 2020, because remember we had the pandemic and all these other effects going on. So let's talk about the kind of force that was used. And there's all sorts of force, right? We talked about that. We have something called the wrap. And the wrap is basically when you're in a seated position and your feet are secured and your hands are secured in front of you, and you're in a seated position in this wrap. And it has handles on the side, so we can easily lift the whole package and as a person and move you. And so you don't hurt yourself. Much like being on a gurney and tied down and 4-point restraint in a gurney, only this is in a seated position. It's a great tool, and it prevents positional asphyxia, prevents people from hurting themselves. It's fantastic. It's a great tool, but it's a use of force, so we document it. If I push you or shove you, right? Wrist lock, if I take you to the ground, if I hold you by your hair, those are all considered relatively minor uses of force. And that's the majority of the force we use, right? In 2021. Let's talk about the more moderate uses of force, where I take you to the ground. I do a taser application. You have to use a punch or a kick, or use an extended range weapon, such as the FN 303 we talked about. That was pretty light, really. That's less than a third of the times of overall times we're talking about. Let's talk about firearms. If I take my firearm out and I put it on target on a person, right? I point my firearm at you and say, freeze, don't move. That's a use of force. We never did that. We haven't done that for 2 years. It wasn't until this year that 2 officers were almost murdered that they had to pull their firearms and return fire. That was the first time in many, many years that's had to happen. And it was only because someone was trying to kill them, frankly. I'll talk about that in my next presentation down the line. But before that, we hadn't pointed a firearm at a person in a couple of years. And we certainly had discharged it. So of the 38 times, most of them were relatively in the minor range. So again, pretty impressive. So again, we only use force in about 3% of all arrests, or all the arrests that we talked about. I'm not going to belabor this, but basically it's less than 100,000th of the time we contact somebody that we have to use force. By example, if you look at the city of Seattle, it's about around 18% they do it, which is also extremely low for 400,000 incidents. So I'm not banging on Seattle PD, but just to give you some context. We use very little force here. We're able to de-escalate and not use force in over 97% of all our arrests. And I think that's pretty telling. So out of the 38 uses of force, we had 6 officers that received minor injuries. That's about 16% of the time, and that's about a third reduction from the year prior. We always review our incidents and we try to find ways to do it better and safer, right? And use less force and not get injured in the process, and not injure the person in the process. And when we say injury is any complaint of pain, any bruise, any scratch, any owie, anything, right? And so out of the 30 uses of force, 12 suspects, or about a third, received injuries, and none of the injuries required hospitalization or long-term care, no broken bones, something like that, right? They're all fairly minor, bruises, scratches, that a taser probe had to be removed, it's a puncture, complaint of pain, those type of things. So again, suspect injuries, that's a 42% decrease. Even with our continued emphasis on reporting all injuries, it's still a 40% decrease from what we've had before in the year prior. This is a very complicated graph with a lot of information, but what it shows is that our use of force is very balanced and it's not targeted towards any racial group. And it goes through the different types of force, and we've talked about that. These are the rap, the push, the shot, da. And you'll notice as we go through it that there's no, oh my gosh, they're only hitting one ethnicity or one race. It's balanced throughout the whole group. And you'll get all this information, so you don't have to memorize it. It's okay. I know it's a lot. It's a very data-rich presentation. I apologize. Again, felony crimes, forces used 18 of the 38 uses of force. 18 of them were felony crimes, 16 for misdemeanor crimes, and 4 for mental health. Remember, before July, we could use force to help on mental health detentions. After July, we weren't allowed to do that anymore. So that's the difference. So only 4 of these were for mental health. And that was prior to the law change in July of last year. And again, balanced across. All right, oops, there we go. It's a pie chart. I know you get tired of looking at the matrix. So again, if you look at this, almost half were felony, other half, less about 42%, 40% were for misdemeanors, and the rest were for mental health. And we look by race, again, it's a very small data set. But again, you have mostly white, some African American, Black, and then Hispanic, Asian, Native American, and some unknown. And when I say, 9's a very small data set. It's hard to tease out data into balance when you get those small data sets. But still, the proportionality is pretty close with that, so I'm pretty pleased. And again, arrest, understand when you're talking about arrest, that isn't all officer initiated activity. As I said, there's some mandatory arrests that you have to make that you don't have a choice on, right? So some of the data is going to be skewed when it comes to that. Now let's talk about field interviews. Field interviews, officers have some discretion on who they stop and who they talk to, right? Well, here we are. Here's our graph. Primarily white. Oh, darn it. There we go. So primarily white, 75%, 5% Black, right? 3% Asian. There's our Native American, and then 15% Hispanic, or unknown, really. But in any event, again, the ratios are very telling that we're not targeting any particular racial group for officer-initiated activities. Traffic citations, very similar. Again, the ratios are very close. I can tell you that our traffic stops were way down during the pandemic. And the folks that got stopped were generally doing some pretty outrageous stuff, or it was part of a car crash and that kind of thing. Again, in arrests, again, we had no complaint of racial profiling during 2021 at the police department. Again, the ratio primarily white, then Black, then Asian, then Native American, and there's some unknown in there as well. This white category more than likely takes some of the Hispanic as well, because it's only racial data that's captured by the FBI. Okay, that is a lot of information. I'm going to stop sharing here so we can actually see each other a little better. Okay.
Very good. Thank you, Chief.
So I had a question about, actually, I kind of want to ask your opinion about something. So this is all really great. The breakdown of arrests is, probably what it should be, according to what the demographics of the city are. I don't know if you heard about a couple weeks ago, King County had that bike helmet law, where they had decided, or I don't know how they decided, but they had determined that there was, I think it was 4 times more Black people being cited for not wearing a bike helmet than white people. So they just took the law away versus like trying to enforce it equally. I'm just curious what would we do if those stats, those pie charts were not as equal? Like, would Lacey just I don't understand why they just decided to take that law away versus trying to train their police to just more equitably enforce it.
Yeah, so let's go back to what's going on, right? So folks decided to use a law as a springboard to detain people, right? And in this case, it was bike helmet. In other instances, it's been something hanging from the rearview mirror. In other instances, it's been tinted windows. Other instances, it's been someone talking on the phone, right? What you're talking about are pretextual stops, right? So stopping someone for one reason, but you really want to talk to them for another, right? And they've been used not only to investigate, but also to harass people of color. We don't do that. That's part of the training, right? That's part of what we do. We don't have targeted, it's just targeting. I don't want to say anything else, but you shouldn't be doing pretextual stops like that. Now, is there a reason to do a pretext stop? Yes. If you're conducting a surveillance and you've got someone leaving a dope house and you need to stop that person and talk to them, there was a time when that kind of made sense. Well, since they changed the dope laws, that doesn't make sense anymore, right? But if I'm watching a chop shop where people, I think stolen cars are inside and that kind of thing, and I need to stop the car, yeah, okay, maybe I'm gonna look for something so I can stop that car to find out if it's stolen. Okay, that kind of makes sense to me. But just to stop people for a non-investigative reason makes no sense to me whatsoever. Just because I want to stop people in a particular area because we've got other crime going on and they need to know that the cops are out here paying attention. No, that's harassing people. So I agree, I agree with you. That's not why we're here. That's not the reason for your police department. We're here to be present, but not as an adversarial force. Trust me, the crooks know we're out there. They know. It's no surprise. Do you know why the camps went from 77 to 2? Because we showed up every single day and said, hi, we're the police. How can we help you today? And they realized, maybe we shouldn't bring stolen bikes here because the cops are here every day and they're going to start taking away our stolen bikes and this is going to be really productive. So they kind of disappeared. Then you had the guys who were bringing stolen property from Fred Meyer and Target and all the other places and kind of laying it out there. And then we'd find it and they said, oh, that doesn't work so well either. So they went away. So finally, we just came down to the core group of homeless folks that actually wanted help and needed help. And we were able to help them because crooks don't want to be around cops. That's why having cops around is a good thing, right? We're just kind of natural, antibodies to cops. We don't actually have to do a whole lot except be seen and be engaged in the community and talking to good people, right? People figure it out pretty quick. And if you commit a crime, I'll take care of it. I'll deal with it. Not a problem. I've made a good career of putting bad people in prison. Not a problem. Happy to do it. But it's not always the most appropriate thing to do for low-level offenses. Introducing people in the criminal justice system for a low-level offense. That creates a bad cycle. You deal with the big stuff. There's other ways to handle smaller stuff. We can have a longer conversation on that.
Yeah, I think we're pretty lucky, in Lacey, because it doesn't seem like we have the problems that, other places do. It's just really interesting to me because I feel like in order to have that response to let's just take the law away versus like, can the police just be more equitable in how they operate is interesting. And I wonder if there had to have been some, and I don't know, like that's because I'm not in King County. I don't know what that process was like, but there must have been some public, or I don't know if the police, I don't know who makes the decision to take a law away, but like, would they just do that on their own? It's just, it's a weird thing to me. And it doesn't look like it's really an issue here. I'm just curious, like you as the chief, what would your response be if you did see those stats?
if I saw that an officer or a group of officers were using a law to disadvantage a group and inflict their presence on whatever, I would take action to stop it and say, no, it's not an appropriate use of our resources. And you've totally misconstrued our purpose here. But I think it was funny what you said, that we're lucky that those kind of things aren't here. Yeah. Well, it's funny. The harder we work, the luckier we are, right? So, I mean, I've always kind of giggled about that one. Because I think that it's purposeful and you treat people right. And you know, bad people don't want to be where good people are. They just don't. It's not a good environment for them to be in. They want to be in the shadows where they can get away with their tomfoolery and their nonsense. And you know, we're the flashlight, we're the bright light. We say, no, you can't do that. Not here, not with good people.
Fortunate. The residents of Lacey are fortunate. Maybe that's a better word.
Fortunate. Yes, we are. We're all fortunate. So I know I gave you a lot of information late at night, and I apologize. But
I have a couple of comments or questions or whatever the case might be. But let me add my comment also to what was just stated. I had the pleasure of being on the Citizen Selection Committee that recommended you for the police chief. So I'm being validated. We're being validated that we made a good recommendation. So congratulations on that, Chief. And then with your selection of Deputy Chief Hollis, talk is cheap, but you've acted. And so, hi, Robbie. Good to see you on the call tonight. But early in your presentation, you talked about your Explorer program with post-high school graduates and that kind of thing. I'm curious, being interested in the diversity of the city and that kind of thing. How much of that Explorer program do you use to try to grow our own from the point of view of Bi-Pac populations being a part of the Explorer program, because they become the feeder system to your applicant pool for the future police officers that you're looking for? So when you talked about that Explorer program, I'm just curious to know, how do young Bi-Pacs know about this? Because there is a good community relations between the community and the police department.
So whenever we go out and do our public engagement with the community, whether it be car stuff or, you know, so we talked about the cultural event coming up on 13th. All that stuff, we always we put out our table, we got our free tchotchkes for the small kids, and we always kind of put out our banner for the explorers. We try to get our explorers out there to kind of do recruiting amongst their peers, because you're easier to talk to a kid, not me, right? I'm an old guy who's going to talk to me. If you're a young person, you want to talk to another young person, right? So I try to bring some young people out there, and I try to make sure that it's someone who I can talk to, right? It's a girl, it's someone of my race, ethnicity, color, background, whatever, that I can relate to, right? That we can talk shop about and have a common interest. And why should I care about the Police Explorer program? Well, let me tell you what it brings, right? And so it's a great vehicle for gender equity, because I'm big about getting females in law enforcement, right? It's important. It's so important to make sure that we have gender equity and BIPOC. And so that's all part of what we're doing. Recently, I promoted 6 corporals when we started our corporal program. You know, half were BIPOC. That's important, right? And it's important that we have these opportunities and that we walk our walk and talk our talk and talk our walk, all that, and make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. So people can see that it's not just us saying stuff, but we're doing stuff. And that's important. And so I always try to make sure that we go out and we use those opportunities to not only do explorers, but we do our senior program too. Because I want to make sure our seniors are involved. We got a lot of seniors in the city of Lacey. I want to make sure they're engaged. And there's a lot of BIPOC seniors, and I want to make sure they're engaged. All these different communities and all these different opportunities for us to be engaged with our community and for them to be part of us. And I think that's really important.
And I had a question. I'll be quick here because we've got such great information and lots of questions. A comment and observation on your annual report, your biannual report, your front cover, your cover sheet, the photograph. It does not do justice to the diverse population of your police department that you so wonderfully have expressed here. The optics are important. That's the first thing people are going to see. And so the absence of some of those BIPOC populations, you have some females, but let that picture, let that first sight that people see, let them see that diversity that we're all, validating and complimenting Lacey Police for being. So let that optic also tell that story without.
You're 100% right. 100% right. So the deputy's nodding his head. He's like, I told you, Chief. Because he came on board and gave me a lot of great suggestions. But yeah, we're going to go back to doing trading cards. We're going to do a group photo so you can see everybody in the department, right? Not the undercover folks, but everybody else. And so you're going to get to see us, right? All stitched together in one group photo because we can't always get everybody at the same spot. And you're going to get that diversity. And we're going to we haven't done a group photo in years. We haven't done trading cards in years. And so we really want to make sure, just like you're saying, Madam President, that we do that and that folk get to see the real us and our makeup and how diverse we really are. And we look just like the community. That's the idea.
Right. And one last question, and this hasn't come up, but I've been watching a lot of the news lately, and there's been a lot of talk about the increase in gang activity. And I didn't hear any mention in any of your presentation about gang activity. The interpretation could be that there is none, but that's an unfair interpretation. But would you just speak briefly about Lacey, Thurston County, Lacey and its environs? To what degree do we have gang activity?
It's interesting. It really is that you bring that up because it's not what I'm used to at all. I'm used to much more racially segregated gangs. In the penal system, you've got Crips, you've got Bloods, you've got Peckerwoods, and you got Nazi lowriders, and they're all separate, right? None. Here we have multiracial gangs. It is not what I'm used to. We have multiracial gangs that identify as Crip for one thing, and I'm like, if you were to do that, that would not work. Where I'm from, that would not work at all. But here it is, right? But it's interesting. We have BIPOC gangs under a certain banner, which is really interesting. I'm not going to give them credence, but they do. And they're not very big and not very active. They're more of a clique than a gang. And they're organized for purposes of friendship and some criminal enterprise, but they're not the criminal organizations that we've kind of seen in other venues, right? So it's much more hometownish. It's graffiti based a lot, some drug culture stuff, but it's not like the Crips that have organized for online crime, right? Or, that kind of thing. It's just not what we're really experiencing here on a daily basis here in the city of Lacey, or even in Thurston County. It's a bit different. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. It just isn't the primary crime vector that we're seeing right now.
That's good to know. Thank you very much. Any other questions, any other comments? This has been an excellent presentation. Thank you so much. Very informative. As we communicate with the constituent groups that we represent, this is awesome information to arm us with so that we can help correct some of the false perceptions or what people see in other places that don't necessarily, apply here. And so it arms us with information. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you. We're only as good as our next encounter. So please give us as much information as we can, and we love to build and learn and develop. So we really are very receptive to all suggestions and really incorporating the work of this committee.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from any other commissioners?
Just thank you.
Great. Well, seeing that, then we'll turn it back over to Shannon for the introduction of our business item 4C.
Well, thank you, Chief and Deputy Chief, for joining us tonight, and we'll certainly have you both back here shortly, and we appreciate the presentation, so thank you. For our third business item for this evening, it is our Strategic Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Plan Workshop number 6, and we do have Tevin Medley from the Athena Group joining us, And before I hand it over to Tevin, I just really quickly want to do a time check. It is 7:30. By the Commission on Equity's Rules of Procedure, meetings can go no longer than 8:30. So I just want to make you all aware of that. So what I would recommend to this group is, I know Tevin is going to lead us through this workshop. And there is a section where we come back to talking about the bike rack additions. And my recommendation would be to have a brief conversation on that and then return that at our next meeting when we have a little bit more time to take that up so that we can still get our update on the Juneteenth event and also just discuss some of the upcoming events.
Well, let me make a comment on what you just said. Realizing that one of the most important aspects of our work is this strategic diversity, equity, and inclusion plan. I would rather not rush that tonight. We have a lot of critical things that we need to clearly understand. Workshop number 6 really needs to proceed in its entirety as Tevin had planned to present it to us. And time is of essence here with a couple of other items. I don't know how to rearrange the time. If he goes into half of it and comes back, continue workshop number 6 along with workshop number 7, but not to short sell this particular critical item for the sake of time.
And Chair Jackson, thank you for that clarification. That was not my intent to short sale. It was more of
I know.
Let's have an
I'm not
introduction
accusing you of that. Yeah, I'm not accusing you of that. I'm just saying as we enter into it, it's something we might possibly want to think about beforehand, other than have Tevin, trying to cram it all in to the amount of allotted time, given the importance of the topic.
Right, and Chair Jackson, that's what my recommendation would be when we get to the 4th item, which is the bike rack additions, that we hold off. We introduce what we want to, have a discussion on at the next meeting, and then pause it there, and then pick that part up as part of our March meeting with the commission.
Okay, great. We're on the same page, definitely on the same page.
And so with that, I'll turn it over to Tevin.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. Happy Black History Month. Good to see you all. Quick question, though, because I have been here with you all for these presentations. Do we need a stretch break before we go into the next part, or do we want to power through?
Let's power through.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to screen share here real quick. And can everyone see my screen, and is it legible, big enough for everyone?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so as I always like to start with a quick check-in, brief as you'd like. If you have any access needs, if you do need to stretch, I encourage you to do that. If you want to go off camera, absolutely fine. So how are you showing up and any access needs? And I'll go first. That great presentations tonight, and just showing up excited for this next phase of the strategic planning process, and my access needs are met.
This is Cliff. I have no access needs, and just looking forward to the next session. Commissioner Jackson?
I'm good. Let's go. Annie?
Yeah, I'm good too. Got lots of energy still.
Not me. I'm just about collapsing here, but I will go. It's a long day. It's been a long day.
And me, my only thing is I missed last month's meeting. And so if I could just get the video synopsis of that, then I will be good to go and I'll cut up.
Okay.
Great.
Christine?
Yeah, I'm here.
Who else we have?
Ready.
Who else is there?
I believe that is everyone. I am no access needs, and I'm ready to go.
All right. All right.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, we're going to power through. Okay, so on our agenda tonight, we're going to revisit mission, vision, values statements. We've done a bit of work there, and then taking feedback from the last meeting where we wanted to add to that vision. We're going to go over some of the revised language, and then in a bit, we're going to also discuss tonight possible scenarios. So the piece that I love about the scenarios is, you know, we have updated mission, vision, values at the end of this process. And I want us to think about the real world application of these tools. And so we're going to talk about some scenarios that this commission may come across to think through as a group. And I don't have the perfect answer for what this is going to look like as we talk through processes, but this group is going to decide what that means to them. So to start with the draft vision statement, which I'll read, the City of Lacey is an inclusive community that embraces the gifts, talents, experiences, and contributions of all community members and works collaboratively, internally and externally to advance equity in Lacey. Taking out the part that says City of Lacey. So Lacey is a community where change starts by listening. Diversity is celebrated. Opportunities are equitable. Partnerships are cultivated, barriers to full participation are eliminated, and with the addition from feedback, we wanted something that centered accountability. And so the last bullet being accountability is central to achieving the above. So I'll pause there, and I want to hear from folks who provided that really great feedback on accountability. How does this last bullet sit? And then also as a vision statement, as a whole, does this feel complete?
I think I was one of the people about accountability, and I think that's really concise, and that says it for me. That it's not just words. We're going to be. These are our actions, and we are going to hold ourselves, and the community will hold us accountable for it. Mm-hmm.
I think as the statement now reads, it reflects the input, the discussion, and the kind of things that previous meetings have dealt with, and the inclusion up there in that vision statement about embracing gifts, talents, experiences, and contributions of all community members. I think that adds a great deal to that vision statement. And, you know, there's a lot of work just involved in that little piece right there. Mm-hmm. But the way it now reads, I'm happy.
I'm happy as well. I think it really reflects everything that we wanted to say. So my thumbs up.
Yeah, I love it too. I love the accents on the actions of what it takes to achieve what we want the city to become.
Great. And I think this may be our final version of the draft, if we have no further comments for the vision statement.
That's good.
Awesome. Okay, moving on then. I'm going to go over the mission statement next. And I'll read that aloud for us. The city is committed to delivering exceptional public services, policies, and programs that integrate equity and social justice as core principles, and we continue to grow as a vibrant and thriving community. The city is committed to working collaboratively with community partners to help create equitable access to opportunities and resources for all community members. And the question here is, keeping in mind the mission is who we aim to serve and why we're here, does this mission feel accurate?
I'm pleased with the current wording.
Yep, I'm on board with that.
Other thoughts?
So it says city is, so is it something to do with, I mean, does it reflect us as an equity commission?
It's a great question, Commissioner Sauer. And, the Commission on Equity is an advisory body to the Lacey City Council. So in working in that effort, that's absolutely under the umbrella of the city is committed. This group works, to help the Lacey City Council process through, information, policies, programs, procedures, et cetera. So absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. I mean, in a sense, I don't know, when I first read it, it sounded like we're speaking for the city, and I know that we are part of the city. So anyway.
And Commissioner Sauer, just as a reminder, so there will be, as part of the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Strategic Plan, there will be a section that explains, what the commission is tasked with by the Lacey City Council and how the Commission on Equity was integral in creating this strategic plan.
Thank you.
That seemed to be okay, Kevin.
All right. All right, so for the draft value statement, I'm going to go over this, and something that I did with this value statement is I pulled out the values. So when we talk mission, vision, and values, and we specifically talk about values, I just extracted those from the statement, which I placed here below, but I'll read through that draft value statement. The City of Lacey champions change that leads to a more equitable society for all community members, regardless of race, gender, income, age, sexual orientation, disability, nationality, religion, gender expression, English proficiency, and education attainment, among other identities, many of which can intersect to create compounding, marginalization, or privilege. We strive to eradicate all forms of racism and oppression, which have had disproportionate negative impacts on Black, Indigenous, and people of color through actions, partnerships, support, and advocacy. We recognize the power city government has to impact the lives of our community members. In our city government and operations, we strive to shape, advance, and implement policies, practices, and programs that help eliminate inequities that result from centuries of racism and oppression. We begin with self-examination and listening and creating platforms for historically marginalized and underrepresented communities to be heard. The city is committed to working collaboratively with community partners to help create equitable access to opportunities and resources for all community members. And I'll pause there and scroll just a bit so we can take a closer look at the values that are actually in that statement. And then any comments, feel free. And how do we feel about the value statement and those values that are in there?
Well, I wanted to just add something, and the majority of our work is around racism and oppression of BIPOC people, but I am so aware of how much legislation, how much violence, how much backlash there is against LGBTQ people. In Florida, you can't say the word gay in their schools. I mean, I wonder, how are we going to protect and embrace our LGBTQ plus group? And tell me if this isn't the place, but
I feel it would be. I mean, why not? If this should also encompass encompass disabled individuals as well. So can we use the word underrepresented? Possibly.
But it is in the first sentence. It is in the first paragraph.
Okay.
We have all of that.
Yeah.
And if I may, so absolutely a great point. And one thing that I want to emphasize is that our values, I hope, at this point encompass all of what was shared. And if there is something that we want to see, that can be a strategy within the strategic plan. So perhaps a focus on specific groups as a strategy. So when we say, I want to see more inclusion around specific groups, and that can be a strategy. And perhaps, that can look like all different kinds of things that we can come up with in this group and ask the public for input on. And so what I'm hoping is that we did actually capture those groups. We've captured those groups. And, if there's anyone that is missing that we see that's not here, I definitely want to make sure we double back to include them.
Yeah. And I do see sexual orientation. I see gender, but gender may not, include your sexual orientation, but then your gender expression too. So
yeah,
I'm loving that.
Well, that first paragraph seems to capture any and all groups that could be in any way referred to.
Yeah.
So that's an inclusiveness that wasn't originally there. So I think it adequately captures all of that discussion we've had.
Well, and thank you, Tevin, for pointing out we can have more strategy that's directed at any kind of discrimination for particular groups. But yeah, yes, I agree now.
Probably the only thing that I really don't see in here, and I don't know where this would even fall, would be military. So
meaning
that's the only thing. I don't well, I mean, like transplants, I like when I first got here and anywhere that we PCS, it's really hard when you get the feeling that there's so much community and family, and you're just getting here and you're having to start all over again. Yes, you may have your battle buddies and your military affiliates, but still you've got to get to know them. And a lot of times when I came from Germany, it was easier to make those because we were all in that situation where nobody really had any extended family there unless you were married to somebody that was a local national and they had their family there. But when I came here, I didn't have any family. So, and my kids didn't have any families. They didn't have any cousins here. So, they're wanting to do stuff with their friends, but their friends have, cousins that live nearby and family reunion type of thing. How do you get that sense of family when somebody first arrives? How do you make them feel like that? The only thing I could think of was, I don't know how to even put that in there. I was looking at income and thinking maybe changing income to class, but that still doesn't cover somebody who is newly there. And I don't know if that makes a lot of sense to you all there. I guess it takes time, but I don't know how you would even describe that.
I'm not sure how we would describe it either, because, from the point of view of equity and inclusivity and that kind of thing, you're describing something that's not really into the equity arena. I'm not, I don't hear any complaints from the military community per se. I think Lacey is a very embracing community of its military citizens, of its military people. And that comment has been made, in our listening sessions, how military people are made to feel welcome when they come into the community. From the minute they turn off of I-5 and turn on into Lacey, It seems like you're describing something a little different than inequitable treatment towards military people, like I think might be present in some communities. And that's not the case here in Lacey. I think it's a very welcoming
that is true
for the military.
That is true. And when you put it in that perspective, yes, I agree.
Commissioner Hart, I also add, oh, go ahead. Chair Jackson.
I was going to say, I think this value statement is powerfully worded and it is strong. And I think it reflects the strength of City of Lacey and its environs. I'll just leave it at that.
And Commissioner Hart, I was going to add, if you look at, the first paragraph, it does, we recognize that we weren't going to be able to capture every single identity. And so certainly, we wanted to keep a broad opening with among other identities, which can intersect to create compounding marginalization or privilege. And that was intentional, just knowing that we weren't going to be able to do that at this time, or, things change in the future too, what that would look like, but having that ability to make sure that we were, noting an equitable society for all community members.
Got it.
And I was just going to add also to not lose that, though, if that's feeling like something that's important, to make sure that there's some planning around, some strategy around. I do know, and correct me if I'm wrong, Shannon, that City of Lacey does have a group that's not that old, that's maybe more recent, that is related to the military and organizing events and engaging with the community. And so perhaps that's something that can be included in that strategic plan, and maybe that's a network connection that can happen at some point.
Tevin, I think that's an excellent point, and that is the South Sound Military's Community Partnership. The city is also involved with a number of other military groups as well, like the AUSA program. And so certainly that could be something that we could look into, building connections and networks and having future conversations. And then also, as Tevin identified a little bit earlier in this conversation, as we're looking towards strategies, just keeping that in mind too, for meeting that strategy and goal too of how do we create a welcoming community and how do we sustain a welcoming community as well.
Right. Okay.
So in general, we feel that we want to make any updates to values, the draft of the value statement, or we're good for where we're at right now, knowing that we can always come back to it?
I think it looks good. Very good.
I think it looks great. Thumbs up for me. Yes.
Yep,
Me too.
I agree.
Okay, great. So what we're going to do is we're going to move on. And then something I want to emphasize for us as we look at these scenarios, and we'll go one by one here, is to hold close to us those mission, vision, and values as we go into decision making. Prior to jumping into these scenarios, I want to just give another example to drive that point home. And that is the recommendations that we heard from community members anytime that we're engaging the public. So we'll see that there is a list, a host of different recommendations, many different things here, right? And the question becomes to make decisions easy. So where do we start? What do we include? What do we exclude? For me, it's all about alignment with mission, vision, and values, especially values. And in that lens, with that lens of our equity values, it becomes very easy to see what is in alignment and maybe things that are not in alignment. Just because something is not in alignment doesn't mean it's a no-go, but it means that it can be adapted as a recommendation to make it more in alignment with what we hold true to be, our values. And so with that in mind, I want us to go through these scenarios to say, we have a clear mission, a clear vision, and very clear values. And so if presented with these scenarios, how might the Commission on Equity work through them? And we'll start with the first scenario here, and I'll read that. So funding has just come through for a major project in the city of Lacey. When asked by the city, how should the Commission on Equity go about providing broad input or recommendations related to DEI and this project? And the idea is if this was presented tomorrow, what would we do next?
I would think the first thing we'd want to know is what is the criteria for contractors and subcontractors to be able to participate in this major project? And are there any federal or state and local requirements for, what is it, minority, participation? And then once we have that information, then ask, how can we help to identify some of these, minority or diverse organizations to participate?
And I had some similar input, not knowing exactly what the particular major project was that was being talked about. But along the same lines as Cliff, I'd want to know the funding source. I'd want to know the focus of the project. I'd want to know whatever limitations there might be about it. You can use the funds for this, but you can't use the funds for that, that kind of thing. The degree of discretion that comes with the funds. And would this project afford us the ability to address any of the DEI issues that we've identified? And are any of Cole's Commission on Equity's priorities? How does it fit into this particular project, and et cetera? So those kinds of things I would want to know before I crafted any recommendations to the city about its use. Funds come in all kinds of shapes, sizes, and colors and get used in different kinds of ways. So what is it about us and our value systems and what we're trying to stand for will guide us in the recommendation back to the city about the use of such funds, whatever they might be.
Another thing I think about is if it's a physical project, like purchasing property, building the new police station, for instance, that what neighborhood is it going into and what's the impact on that neighborhood? Sometimes it's, or what are the resources, what kind of impact would that be on the neighborhood, and what kind of neighborhood is it? Especially we could use our equity tool when we get it done, and we can tell who lives in that neighborhood.
And accesses, what kind of access is it going to restrict to people for getting around? Is it going to clog I-5? Is it going to cause a lot more detours and a lot more traffic? May impact the busing system.
How about artwork? Is there any artwork? I love that presentation from the museum the other day. Can we have some of our Bi-Pac artists, add to something?
Yeah, mural history, some kind of plaque. I know that they've got the Gold Star Memorial that they're looking at too. So I don't think that's a City of Lacey project, but.
So Commissioner Hart, just on that really quickly, the City of Lacey has provided $30,000 in funding for that project.
Okay. Okay.
One other consideration that I might just throw in, just food for thought, is environmental. And so, if there are going to be any impacts to the environment, what does that look like for communities? Just to put it out there. Perhaps also in that same sector is, land rights and, indigenous lands and that conversation as part of that equity piece.
Great.
Okay, so let's talk about the second scenario, and I'll read that one. A neighboring community or organization is voicing concerns of racial inequity or oppression related to policy to the Commission on Equity. So someone coming forth to the Commission with concerns. How could the Commission on Equity proceed?
You first of all have to listen thoroughly and really understand, you know, what is being voiced here, what is the concern.
Or why they feel that there is inequality or oppression somewhere.
That's an interesting question. I know in the Olympia Commission, they're actually they're going to have a system for taking these complaints, which I think is more responsibility than we have developed for ourselves. But saying that, yes, I would say maybe we could have we could create a smaller 2 or 3 of us to sit down in person with this complaint, the person who brought the complaint, so that they felt heard, and maybe not in a public manner. And then I would hope that we could facilitate and be a part of a conversation with the body that they are having a complaint with, maybe.
Well, I found this scenario to be a little confusing as I read it, because it had the word a neighboring community. It didn't say it was this people from Lacey coming to us, you know, talking. This is a neighboring community, you know, voicing concerns about racial inequity or oppression, you know, and I kept reading it 2 or 3 times trying to figure out, you know, these aren't people from our community. This is someone from a neighboring community. And so the answers that I've heard from you all, first of all, we try and listen, trying to see what's the nature of their complaint, or to see if it's legitimately a complaint about Lacey, or send them back to the city where they're bothered by their inequities or something. But a neighboring community kind of clouded my head as to how to think about the rest of that scenario.
Like, ooh, yeah, what about the unincorporated Thurston County people?
Yeah, I think we look for a manner in which we can do a warm, you know, transfer to, you know, their community, the appropriate organization in their own community, i.e., you know, we contact the appropriate party and we bring them together, and then we are able to step away if that's, you know, appropriate.
Yeah, I think that's why I said we need to understand what the issue is. Is it something like caused by our community? Is it like too much smoke that we're making, or are we creating that? I mean, who knows what? I mean, I think we need to understand why this becomes an issue of ours. So.
And I think that is the question at hand here is, what if something happens very close by that is not directly related to the work of the city or this Commission on Equity? Is it acknowledged? Is it communicated at all? Is it a non-concern? And thinking about our mission, vision, and values, what would be a good way to go about addressing something if someone were to come to the Commission on Equity with these concerns, raising them, but it isn't like we've read here, necessarily directly related to the work of the city?
I think that you know, we'll need to do the best that we can to help, because that neighboring community might not have what we have. And of course, you know, we can be lending our assistance in some ways, almost like a mentoring that community to be part of because you do need to bring everybody together in a way, especially if it's neighboring community. There's a effect that's gonna come to us or come to other neighboring communities. So you can't just be good by yourself and thinking that our community will be safe. I think we have to include others, even if, in fact, I mean, it's a global effect. So it's, especially if it's right neighboring community, I think we have some, I don't know, I don't want to call it a responsibility, but it'll be very wise to be collaboratively addressing that issue.
And I think we can point out our values and the kinds of things we stand for, and for people to, and suggest that people look at the model we've developed that might help with the issue that they're bringing to our attention. Other than that, I couldn't quite wrap my head around that scenario.
Some groups that that I've worked with, sometimes within their resources and the constraints of systems as they go, can't use anything but their voice to advocate and to just kind of make something heard and make their stance, like was shared here, just make it known what they do stand for, sometimes what they stand against. And just thinking through what that might look like. If something is brought forward, is voice an option? How might that be done? Is it this group coming together to make a statement? What does that even look like? What's possible?
Yeah, I think even to issue some sort of a solidarity statement and saying that we support you in this, something like that would be helpful. For example, when there was a hate crime against like Asian Americans, other business resource group that are Black or Hispanic, they issued a statement of solidarity, kind of we support you type of thing. So it was indirect, it may not be directly affecting their community, but it made a huge difference by showing their alliance. So I think that kind of thing could even happen too.
Shannon, I saw you unmute there.
Well, I unmuted just to make the statement. You started this off, Tevin, by saying alignment with the mission, vision, and values. And what I've heard so far is listening, creating platforms, collaborating with partners, all of which are found in those value statements as well as that mission and vision. So I just wanted to point that out to the Commission on Equity.
Mm-hmm. All right, last scenario that we'll talk through is a city policy, event, or program is believed to be not in alignment with the city's DEI mission, vision, and values. How could the Commission on Equity proceed?
Call the mayor and put him on the hot seat.
Yeah.
Ask him if he ran it through us first.
Well, barge into the office with an angry voice, of course.
Call it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think to look at the department that this policy is from or impacts, and maybe, seek information as to, why and what's the impact on the community, and then share our concerns. And then secondly, inform that person that we would be addressing it with the city council if that's appropriate, and going from there, but making them aware that this is not in alignment with the DEI is support.
Any other comments or feedback?
Vice Chair Brown, I do appreciate, starting off first with putting the mayor on the hot seat, but then going back and saying, hey, let's find out some information first, right? So going back to those core values of really listening and listening to understand to make decisions after that. So.
Yeah, I get a question, Shannon. If something like this comes up with a department, say utilities or whatever, do we have the ability to ask for a meeting with the director of that department to address some questions or concerns we have as a commission?
So yeah, in a case like this, Commissioner Brown, so say there was something and you brought it up and you said, hey, I've been hearing from one of my focus groups that this is a big concern with the department, and I'd like to learn more information about what's going on, in this particular case. We'd certainly work with, various department to get a presentation, just like the presentations that we've had, from the various departments. We've had human resources, we've had community economic development, our Lacey Police Department. So we'd want to, kind of get the understanding, right? The listen to understand, bring people and hear more about what's going on, what the policy or the procedure might be, and get that background information and ask questions and gather information so that we can continue the process, depending on kind of information that is gathered from that point.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
And it would be my hope that, before things came to the Commission on Equity, that something not in alignment with the city's DEI mission, vision, and values was caught earlier by the city itself, the various, a city council, a mayor, the staff. It should be caught and addressed before it ever get to us where we are being asked to proceed on it. So I would see the Commission on Equity kind of being a last resort, and hope that the checks and balances in place in the other segments of the city would correct it before we have to speak up. So that might be wishful thinking, but
Or even have us be like a follow up. Hopefully they do catch themselves and we can follow up and be like, hey, what happened? Do we need to intervene? Do we need to, make sure you understand, and then go from there?
Those are both excellent points. And this is an advisory body to the council to look over policies, procedures, programming, and events. And, part of why we're bringing on departments is to get kind of a background information so that we can start proactively bringing changes to policy and getting feedback from the Commission on Equity to see if there was something that was missed, something that we should do some more research on, or something that might need greater community feedback on. So we'll actually have a couple of policy documents coming before this board here in the next couple of months. And one of them, for example, is going to be our draft communications policy. So we want the Commission on Equity to look at it in advance of it going out, in advance of it going before the City Council, to see again if there's something that maybe could be added or enhanced, that was missed, or that we need to go back and do some more due diligence and research on. And that's just one thing. So throughout the rest of the year, you're going to see more policy items coming before this board. And again, the intent is proactively to get feedback.
I appreciate these the presentations and the beginning relationships with these different parts of the city. I think is really valuable.
Great. So lastly, on the 15 or so minutes we have left, I want to revisit the bike rack exercise with us all. And I'm going to pop a link into the chat, and then I'm going to screen share so we can all kind of see what we have so far.
Devin, I don't believe we have chat enabled for this meeting, so just to let you know, and also just we have a couple more items that we do again need to take care of before 8:30. So let's. My recommendation could be to introduce the topic, and let's return to this one at our next meeting.
Okay, in that case, I'll wrap this up in a minute or just under a minute. So folks have the agenda for today. And so what we're going to do next is we're going to work on that bike rack activity portion. And we're going to come back next time we meet to actually start to prioritize action. So this is where we come up with all the strategies. We put them in categories and we decide on what's going to happen or could happen in 1 year versus 2 years versus 3 years. And share that back with the folks who have the power to pull the resources together to make it happen. But that's the time we have for today, but very much looking forward to being hopefully in person next month.
Yeah.
Sorry, Kevin, to hurry you up on this. And I know we'll be back to do a little bit more deeper of a dive on that bike rack. The one thing I would add to that is Tevin included as part of the packet for this workshop, some links to some other examples of diversity, equity, and inclusion strategic plans, priorities, and action items. So I would strongly recommend as you're contemplating the bike rack, knowing that every community is very different and that, you know, something that's going on somewhere else might not be applicable here. There's something that might be here that's not somewhere else. But just to take a look and get an idea, you know, of some of the thoughts and questions that have come up. I've heard a couple of them, you know, come up tonight that I think would be excellent additions to that bike rack. And those examples were learning about, you know, procurement and contracts, having a clearinghouse for the city of understanding, you know, who, what, when, where, and why those contracts are being handed out. Another one that I heard was about having community liaisons. I think Commissioner Sauer had mentioned about, you know, volunteering and working with businesses and going out and doing some personal outreach. So I just want to highlight that those types of elements are the things that can be included on the bike rack. I also saw on the bike rack that there was a lot of questions about information, and that's fantastic as well. So I sent you some additional information this week, and not answering, but trying to provide some additional context for some of those questions.
Yeah,
so please feel free to continue to provide questions in addition to kind of goals and strategies on that as well.
Thank you.
Till next time, everyone.
All right. Bye, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That takes us to our last item, number 5, commissioner reports. And you're on a tab, Vice Chair Brown, to report to us on Juneteenth. And I have just a few short comments to make under a report from me. So Cliff, have at it.
Yes, very briefly, this is an ongoing planning activity right now as we move toward the event. We've had several meetings with the Fred U. Harris Lodge Planning Committee. We met in person with them last week at the coffee shop. And so the committee basically was interested in what Lacey can do to assist in the execution of the event and how we could help to enhance that particular event. And as I briefed with City Council, it looked primarily at communications as one of the key areas, you know, banner information, newsletter that goes out into the utility bill, those types of things we shared that we could provide some assistance in. And other things, you know, close in stuff like maybe some audio assistance, games, etc., those types of things that we'll be working on and talking with them about as we move forward. And then finally, guest, you know, I mentioned to the City Council that we would be hoping that they would attend and that, you know, the mayor would be receiving an invitation to briefly address the group. So it's ongoing, and I'll continue to update the commission as we have meetings and move forward and as we identify our role.
Thank you. Cliff, thank you for your representation in those meetings with Fred U. Harris. Really appreciate that.
They meet at my favorite coffee shop, so I like that.
Ah, I know which one that is. Yeah.
Ooh, I don't. Who is it? Where is it?
Cutter's Point in Hawks Prairie.
Yeah.
Wait, which one? We got two. Oh, in Hot Springs, not the one,
the one
over
back
by
at the
my
big
house.
table. Yep, the big.
That's
Yep.
by my house.
Yeah.
Let me know
Right,
when the
right.
next one is.
Okay.
I just wanted to share a few comments on my report. Today marks the end of Black History Month, and it has been quite a busy month. With all that's been going on in the country the last couple of years, it took on a whole different heightened aspect to it. And in this particular area, several things took place. I just wanted to make everyone aware that on Saturday afternoon, there was a formal dedication of a marker in recognition of Rebecca and Alexander Howard over on East Bay Drive, a place called Howard's Point, that we were able to get officially recognized by the National Historic Naming Society, as well as the State Naming Society. So if you're going down East Bay Drive towards Priest Point, right to your left, you'll see this new marker there at the foot of Glass Avenue. There's also a small park that's going to be dedicated to Rebecca Howard in the vicinity of the Olympia Timberland Library. In November of 2021, there was a marker dedicated on behalf of George Bush up on the Capitol campus in the vicinity of the GA building, along with an offspring of a butternut tree. The original butternut tree that he brought across the plains in a covered wagon. Well, this one has been propagated and nursed. And so when spring comes and you're up walking around on the Capitol campus, be on the lookout for this George Bush marker and this butternut tree. And then on, what is today, Monday, Saturday afternoon, I had the pleasure of launching my new book on the Blacks in Thurston County, Washington, 1950 to 1975. And it was an overwhelming activity with standing room only. And so the next time I see you guys in person, which look like it's going to be our March meeting, I'm going to be delighted to give you complimentary autographed copies. My fellow.
Hey, thank you.
Speaking of which, I need to
just
get
wanted to
my
share.
copy because I missed out on the book signing on Saturday. I apologize for that.
That's okay.
Danny,
we wouldn't have had room for you anyway.
I heard it was standing room only. Yeah, Danny Susser made mention of that to me. I think the Thursday or Friday before, but I was I had an event that I was going to at the Amazon headquarters for the Black Employee Network event. I was vending there, so yeah. So I definitely want to get a signed copy. Sorry, signed copy
Very
of
good.
your book, please.
Well,
Reserve one.
Yeah, I don't want to take up any more time on that because we're close and it's 8:30 time, and we still have our director report to be made. So Shannon.
Well, I've got 7 minutes, it looks like, but I will try to beat that time. First of all, I just want to start off by saying thank you all for joining the joint meeting with the Lacey City Council last Thursday. I thought that meeting went really great, and I know there was a lot of appreciation there, so thank you for being there. The second thing on here is focus groups. Actually, the first thing on here is focus groups, and I know the last time we had a conversation about coming back to this group with a plan. But in my email that I sent you last Friday, I talked about doing a community connection analysis and sent you the guide video as well as the companion guide with that. And so what I'd like to do at our next commission meeting in March, in addition to continuing our conversation on the bike rack with Tevin, is doing a community connection analysis with the entire group. And we can do this in person, as Chair Jackson just mentioned. Barring any significant changes, we will be able to meet in person as well as continue to have a remote option. And so we would do the community connection analysis, and through that, it would give us kind of the groundwork for the networks and groups that we have out there. And then also we can have a discussion of what commissioners might be interested in helping set up some of those focus groups and conversations at that point. So that would be on the March 28th meeting. Any questions from the commission on that?
That video, it's in the link on one of the pages of today's meeting. So
The video itself is actually, it was in an email that I sent out, and Commissioner Clay, I can send it out again tomorrow, so it's up on the top of the emails that you have.
That'd be great.
Thank you, that would be great.
Yeah. Second thing I wanted to make a note of is that we do have our joint meeting with the Lacey Youth Council for our first focus group, and that's Tuesday, March 15th at 6 p.m. And so we have a couple of questions that we've used last time, and then also knowing that there was a few questions that I know Commissioner Clay, you had sent me that you'd like to add for consideration as well. I will send out the question list that we have with the email tomorrow, and if there's any feedback that you want to have incorporated into that, please let me know. But that meeting again is going to be on March 15th, and that is at 6 p.m. And I know that the Lacey Youth Council is very excited to have this joint meeting with the Commission on Equity.
Is that in person? Are we able to do?
Nope.
No, that's not to the
Nope.
19th. Mhm.
It misses it by a few days, yes.
Okay.
Correct. I mean, if this commission likes, I can certainly work to try to reschedule that in April if you prefer an in-person meeting.
No.
Okay. All right. Well, then we will continue on that. And I'll certainly let the group know if anything changes that would maybe allow us to meet earlier in person. But at this point in time, it would be after the 24th for the city. The last thing I wanted to mention was that the Lacey Cultural Celebration is on March 12th. We will be having a booth there, and I appreciate all of those who have signed up to help be part of one of the shifts. I think we have enough members for all of the shifts, so that's going to be exciting. I have ordered business cards for us to be able to hand out, as well as making some informational brochures so that that can be handed out to individuals as they walk by as well.
Great.
The very last thing, and I still have 4 minutes, but I haven't taken a breath of air for a bit of time. The inspirational item.
Yeah, I was just about to ask about that.
Well, I'd be willing to do it. I think everybody's had a turn, at least it's on this screen.
Mhm.
Oh, Thelma, have you had a turn? Would you like to do it?
No, be my guest, Annie, go for it.
Yes,
Okay.
remember, and March is Women's History Month. So,
Okay.
Mm. Question, however, on the 12th of March, where is the cultural event? I think I might have missed where that invitation would be.
St. Martin's Pavilion.
St. Martin's.
St. Martin's. Okay. Yeah, I didn't.
So yeah, while we are on that,
check that out.
Sorry, while we are on that, the Korean school and Korean culture, we're having a 3 booth. So that's the reason why I can't really help volunteer to help with our Equity Commission booth. But please stop by. We're gonna bring Korean traditional clothing where people can try that on and take some pictures. We're going to teach Korean. We're going to have some food. I mean, it's just a full-blown operation. So please stop by. And just have a second, I wanted to really thank you for Shannon for last week arranging, giving me a call and even to draft the talking points. Oh my gosh, for the combined meeting with City Council. So really thank you for a lot of work that you're doing behind the back. It's like your feet underwater always help us to float. So thank you so much.
That's great. Yeah, you're amazing.
Great. Well, I
Kim,
think we
where is
made
your
it, Shannon.
event?
I think we made it, Shannon.
We did.
Right under the wire.
2 minutes to spare.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you all for the meeting tonight. We covered a lot of territory. I think we learned a lot. And I'm looking forward to in-person meetings so that we can further get our commission's relationships better developed. So thank you all so very much, and look forward to all the events that's coming up. So with that, if there's nothing else to come before the commission, then we adjourn at, what is this, 8:29 p.m.?
Yeah, all right.
That's under the wire.
Okay.
Thank you.
Have a good
Bye.
week, everyone.
You too.
Yes. Goodbye now.